Wind still howled along the broken ramparts of Winterfell, but it was no longer the ravenous roar of the undead storm. It was the ordinary living wind of the north, wet with sleet, sour with ashes, smelling of horses, smoke, and bleeding men. Dawn's first gray wash revealed everything yet concealed nothing. Corpses in twisted heaps, half-collapsed barricades, shattered scorpions, great mounds of charred bones where pyres had burned through the night. The courtyard's churned mud had frozen into a ragged crust. When sentries trod upon it, the crust cracked like thin ice, releasing little sighs of steam that fled into the morning chill. Bran Stark sat alone beneath the heart tree, unmoving, wrapped in one of his father's old woolen cloaks gone thin at the elbows. Snow dusted the hood and whitened his dark hair. His crippled legs, bundled in furs, rested where roots had thrust up like gnarled fingers from the earth. A raven perched upon the red branch above him, shaking water from its feathers. A second hunched near his wheels. Both birds watched the boy, who was no longer a boy, with eyes that flashed an oily black-green when the sunrise caught them. He felt them watching. He felt every heartbeat in every man and woman in Winterfell. The sobs of gilly-rocking little Sam in the kitchen lanes, the dull ache in Sandor Clegan's half-healed burns, the desperate prayer Sansa mouthed alone at her window. Not to any gods of tree or stone, but to the memory of a mother who would never answer. Bran wore their heartbeats like another cloak, heavy and humming. They kept him tethered to the warm world. Yet beneath that mortal pulse, he sensed another rhythm lingering, faint as an echo in a ruined hall. A slow thrum of something vast and cold retreating northward, yet not retreating far enough. The others were gone. That should have been true. Arya's blade had found the Night King's heart of sapphire ice, and for one impossible heartbeat the world had been all bursting frost and shattering light. But when the shards of him settled, when the blue glare ended, Bran had felt a hole yawn open in the fabric of things. The Night King's death was not an ending, only an emptied place where a great purpose had once dwelled. The purpose remained. It waited. Around him the weirwood's scarlet leaves quivered, though no gust touched them. He closed his eyes, and the god's wood blurred into darkness, streaked with veins of white. Down he sank, past the swaying faces carved in ancient trunks, past black roots drinking icy water, past stone and soil, and the whispering remnants of nameless spirits, to the chamber of memory beneath memory, where the three-eyed crow had first called his name. Visions slid before him like parchment pages. A weirwood grove far to the north, branches glazed in rime. A circle of children dancing with obsidian knives under moonlit frost. A tall man bound to a stone, screaming as ice invaded his veins. A woman with tears frozen upon her cheeks, pressing a carved dragonglass blade against the captive's heart. Blue radiance burst from the wound, and the screaming stopped. The captive's eyes opened. Sapphire, ancient, merciless, seeking. The vision shifted. He saw the same man, thousands of years later, walking the snows outside Winterfell. The hole, Arya's dagger, would one day pierce still glimmered in his chest. A cruel voice whispered through the trees. Finish the circle. Balance. Balance. Died. Bran jerked out of the vision, gasping. The ravens croaked, jittery, hopping along the branch. He steadied them with a thought, smoothing ruffled feathers through a thread of gentle warmth that tasted of summer strawberries and sunlit afternoons at Winterfell, when his mother laughed and his father sparred with Robb. The birds quieted, but the warmth was fleeting. Summer was long dead. Footsteps crunched behind him. Bran? Samwell Tarly's voice fluttered like a parchment caught by wind. You should be inside. It's brutal cold this morning. Sam wore two mismatched cloaks, his cheeks red and raw above his beard. Under his arm he cradled a stack of damp scrolls. The top one bore the wax seal of the Citadel cracked in half. Bran did not turn. The chill won't bite me, Sam. It whistles around me, that is all. Sam hesitated. The funerals start at noon. Jon thought you'd want. I'll be there. Bran's breath plumed. Have you found it? Sam glanced at the scrolls. shifting his weight. In fragments. Archmaester Marwyn's transcriptions of Kasana of the Frostfangs mention the second covenant made before the first long night ended. The language is Old High Valyrian filtered through a Northman's ear. But there's a phrase that repeats, Sistakmis Audruda, which Marwyn glosses as the binding of the stillness, or the stillness chained. Kasana, he lowered his voice, though no one else was near. It reads like riddle and myth, but if the stillness means the deathless winter that walked behind the Night King, Bran finished. Yes. Sam's eyes were wet brown, honest. Bran, Arya killed him. We all saw. She killed the vessel. A breeze stirred Bran's hair. The stillness is no man. It is purpose and memory given shape. It cannot be slain by Valyrian steel or dragon glass, only contained. A thorn pulled from the flesh bleeds until it scabs. The world is bleeding. Sam swallowed. How bad? Bran closed his eyes again. He found the thread of cold in the distance, trailing north like a comet's tail across the map of his mind. Villages along the long lake already woke to hoarfrost thicker than winter should grant. Beyond the wall, packs of direwolves howled with restless fear. Trees cracked open with freezing sap. At the heart of the Frostfangs, something new. A spire of ice growing upward from a ravine that once housed only wind, gathered the night around it. Bad enough, he whispered. The wound widens each dawn. Sam shifted the scrolls beneath his arm. There must be another way. There was always only one way. Bran placed his gloved hand upon the whitened root. A mortal heart bound to the stillness willingly. Only then can the circle be closed. He felt Sam's despair like a tremor, but the maester-to-be straightened with stubborn courage. If it must be done, we'll find someone, he murmured. Someone already dying, perhaps. A condemned murderer. The realm would. No. Bran opened his eyes, met Sam's. It must be one who carries the memory of man and of magic, who can hold both and not break. The stillness will scour the heart hollow. If what remains is hatred or fear, the circle will crack again, and sooner. He let the wind steal his next breath. It must be me. Sam's face fell. Bran, you? He caught himself. I will help you, whatever you need. But I'll search every library from Sunspear to Skagos for another road. John will fight it. Bran's voice was quiet, but the raven stirred as though a storm had rolled across the snow. He must not. When the time comes, you will keep him from me. Niwa. Sam inhaled to argue, but the high whistle of a horn cut across Winterfell's walls. 3 blows, slow and solemn, assembly for the dead. Sam glanced toward the towers. We should go. I will follow. Torti. Bran watched Sam retreat through fresh snowfall, clutching the scrolls to his chest like shields. The ravens whispered above, wings rustling, and Bran listened to the stillness waiting in the distant dark. The courtyard had been swept and salted, yet the stones were slick with half-frozen runoff from melted snow and spilt oil. 30 pyres stood in rows, each body wrapped in linen. Sword laid across chest, faces unmasked so loved ones could see. Jon Snow moved among the mourners like a pale ghost in black leather and fur. Eyes shadowed. Gray ash streaked the hairs at his temple. When he spotted Bran's chair emerging from the Godswood arch, he came at once, boots crunching. You should be abed. Jon's hand closed over the handle of Bran's chair. Rest will do you more good than ceremony. The gods give little rest where I roam, Bran replied. But he let Jon wheel him forward beside the front pyres, where the corpses of Theon Greyjoy and Jorah Mormont lay upon kindling dusted with fresh snow. Ghost padded behind, silent, blood-matted ear pricked toward unseen threats. The direwolf's red eyes flicked to Bran, and did not look away. Priests of Arlor, in red sashes, and septons in threadbare robes, chanted opposite prayers. Splinters of their faiths mingled in the smoke above burning torches. Daenerys stood before Jorah's bier, mouth set in a line carved from grief. Her dragons were gone. One beneath the ruins of King's Landing, another lost beyond the shivering sea. And what remained to her was fire she could not command to stay. Flames leapt. The dead flared bright. Bran felt heat on his cheeks, yet within his chest, the cold hummed louder, drawn to the burning as frost is drawn to window panes in deep night. Balance. 8. Fire and ice. The world sought its measure. Through the wavering heat, he glimpsed Arya near the rear row, face half masked by smoke, eyes haunted. She had done the deed none else could, but death is never clean. Gendry stood beside her, stiff in new lord's finery, unsure how to soothe the wound he could not see. Sansa watched them both, one hand resting on the hilt of a small dagger at her belt, a habit she dared not break now that winter's shadows might be only half gone. When the pyres were ash, Jon spoke words of thanks to the living and vows to guard the memories of the fallen. Snow began again, soft as moth wings. The crowd drifted apart, each to their grief or their duties. Bran remained until the last ember dimmed, listening to the hush that followed. The hush was not peace. It was waiting. That night, Mira Reed rode through Wintertown's shattered gate with 30 crannogmen at her back. Thin, rangy men cloaked in patchwork furs and frog-skin leathers, armed with bone-tipped spears and nets of woven reeds. They carried sacks of dried fish, gourds of frog spawn oil, and a message carved into driftwood. "The swamps are freezing. We come." She dismounted in the courtyard as the afternoon's ash still whirled upon the wind. And when she saw Bran watching from the covered walk, she strode straight to him, snow caking her hair, cheeks glowing red. "Your ravens found my father," she said without greeting. "He sent me. What in the names of all gods is happening?" Bran felt something twist inside him, remnant of the boy he had been once, who had crushed on the fierce girl who hauled him through blizzards and barrow downs. "Winter continues?" she snorted. "Your riddles haven't improved." Her smile flickered, then failed. "Is Eugene's dream coming again? The one he wouldn't speak of while he lived?" "Yes." Bran's gaze drifted toward the north gate. The eye in the storm opens. Mira followed his eyes. All she saw was a stretch of churned snow leading into the dark pines of the Wolfswood. Beneath that snow roots pulsed, and through those roots Bran tasted something old. The black blood of the earth. "Tell me what you need," she said. "Courage," he replied, "and nets strong enough to bind a god." That evening, a war council gathered in the great hall, its windows boarded, its hearths blazing. Sansa presided from the high seat, with Arya leaned against the wall behind her. Jon stood at a map table, the painted direwolf of House Stark half obscured by spilled candle wax. Tyrion and Davos conferred quietly, Daenerys seated to one side, stiff as marble. Grey Worm, arms still bound from the battle, watched every northern sword with wary eyes. The hall smelled of stew and pine pitch and charred flesh. "The cold is returning faster than Grand Maester Walken's charts predict," Sansa began. "Villages on the White Knife report the river freezing solid last night. Fishers at Widow's Watch found 9 bodies washed onto the beach. Skin white, lips blue. Dan Nisuhan. The dead can rise again without their king." Davos rubbed his beard, thought the lot of them shattered same as he did. "They do not rise." Bran's voice carried, though it was soft. "The stillness steals warmth, not life, yet. If left unbound, it will birth new vessels when the long shadow spreads." Daenerys' violet eyes narrowed. "Another Night King?" "In time." Bran studied the flicker of torchlight along the dragonglass dagger Tyrion toyed with. "A vessel empty of memory is easier to break than fill. Better a heart offered willingly than one seized in darkness." Arya folded her arms. "What does offered willingly entail?" "Blood," Bran answered. "Roots, ice, and the heart tree at Winterfell, planted deep above flowing waters. The circle must close where first it opened." Jon shook his head. "We brought you home to spare you burdens, not to cast you into them. You cannot spare me what is already mine." Bran felt the crust of frost forming along the hall's stone flags though the fire blazed. "I am the three-eyed raven. I remember every step the stillness took. Memory is the chain." "Nabnan?" Silence pooled like black water. The candle's hollow murmur filled it. Tyrion broke the hush. "Chains are forged to break. What assurances do we have the stillness won't unshackle itself and start the cycle anew? Your own words, purpose, memories. I will not forget. Bran's gaze snared Tyrion's, calm, inexorable. I will not break. Daenerys spoke next, voice thin as old parchment. The realm has bled enough for ancient magics and prophecies. I will not see another friend sacrifice himself. Let's send. You will see worse if balance fails. Bran dipped his head toward her. Your dragons die because magic consumes too freely. The stillness is the counterweight. Without it, fire will burn unchecked until only ash remains. She flinched as though slapped. Jon's fist tightened on Longclaw's pommel. If there's another path, find it. Bran's words were soft yet final. But do not delay searching for fear, you will succeed. Time is hunger. Each dawn the stillness grows. The council dissolved with muttered oaths and scraped benches. Only Meera stayed at Bran's side as he wheeled himself back into the courtyard. The first stars glittered through rents in the cloud cover, cold lights in a black sea. I remember every night I dragged that sledge, Meera said quietly. I swore I'd never do it again. Yet here I am, preparing to haul you into something worse. You need not come. She laughed. A brittle, fearless sound. I never left to stay gone. She took the handles of his chair. Show me this circle you mean to close. They crossed to the godswood. Lantern flames slanted amber across the snow-crusted branches, painting the carved face of the weirwood with streaks of fire that dripped like bleeding tears. Bran bade her set the lantern upon the stump of a fallen elm. Wind breathed, scattering sparks that died on the snow. When the children made the first night king, Bran said, they drove dragonglass through the heart of a man bound to this tree. It was here, on this very spot. The tree remembers. He brushed his gloved fingers across the bark. The white wood shimmered, veins glowing faint red. The stillness seeped into the roots and spread north until ice answered ice. Meera hugged herself. Can roots remember? They dream. Bran closed his eyes. Every leaf is a tongue, and every tongue speaks. I hear them all. She studied him, not the boy she had known but something else wearing Bran's dark smile. And after the circle closes, will you still know me? He breathed, tasted the subtleties of her scent. Bog water, pine smoke, salt tears unshed. Yes, but I will not be Bran alone. Then I will learn the other names. She rested her hand on his shoulder. When he dreamed that night, the dream was clearer than wakefulness. He stood unharmed upon two legs in a field of black snow that glittered like broken bottles. Above, the red comet from summers past was frozen in place, its tail a smear of dried blood across stars. Ahead lay a gate wrought of woven branches, oak, ash, weirwood, ironwood, all fused by rhyme. The gate opened at his approach, soundless. Beyond waited a pool of ink-dark water, steam rising where hot springs fought the rising cold. In the pool's mirrored surface, he saw not a crippled boy, but an armored figure of living ice, crowned with stag-like tines. The figure raised its hand. Bran's own arm lifted. Mirror and self merged. He woke before dawn, heart hammering. Yet he felt no fear, only certainty. The choice had been made, perhaps long before he was born. Perhaps in the moment the tree first felt his blood upon its roots after his fall. A life's path might be a wheel within a wheel. 3 days passed. Jon gathered supplies for arranging none wished to name. Arya honed her dagger, studying Bran as if trying to memorize something soon to be gone. Sam scoured archives that Davos fetched on horseback from White Harbor. Each parchment yielded only the same refrain. Stillness chained, stillness unchained. Balance, dot. The weather worsened. Snow fell in sheets and froze as it landed, coating turrets in glassy sheaths that shattered when struck by wind. Smiths' hammers rang through the night as they reforged chains, spikes, manacles. Dragonglass melded with Valyrian steel slivers hammered deep. An alloy Sam hypothesized would sing to both halves of magic. He spoke the phrase with tentative awe, as though doubting his own audacity. On the fourth dawn, Bran called Meera, Arya, Sam, Jon and Sansa to the godswood. They gathered around the heart tree, faces pallid in cold blush. Bran wore a simple woolen tunic over boiled leather briny, gifts from Arya's own hand. Around his neck hung a smooth stone of obsidian pierced by dragonbone cord. "Today we prime the circle," he said. "Tonight we see if the world will accept it." Jon lifted a heavy casket. Within lay lengths of the forged chain, each link patterned with runes too old for any tongue. Bran touched the metal. It pulsed like a living vein. He nodded to Mira. She drove a wooden stake, cored with dragonglass, into the ground beside the root where he had sat. Arya, silent, hammered ironwood wedges between the stake and soil, locking it in place. Sam sprinkled a powder of weirwood, ash and ground crystal into the open wound of earth. When all was ready, they wheeled Bran into the space beneath the tree's canopy. He tilted his head back and looked at the bleak sky glimpsed through bleeding leaves. "Leave me until moonrise," he told them. "We stay," Arya said, dagger bare in her hand. Bran smiled at her defiance. "Only at the edge. You must see if the ground cracks. If it does, flee. The stillness will surge before it settles." Jon's voice was ragged. "There must be another way." "There is always another way," Bran whispered, "but fewer have the strength to walk it." Sansa kissed his brow, tears freezing upon her lashes. "Remember who you are." "I remember who we all are." He closed his eyes. They stepped back, uneasy. Ghost lingered, then retreated at Jon's quiet command. Snow began again, slow fat flakes drifting sideways. Bran slowed his breath until it matched the hush of falling snow, then slowed further until it matched the deeper hush beneath the husk of winter. He opened the inner eye and fell. Down the roots he went, roots of wood, roots of memory, into the deep, dark weave. Voices rose around him, the children singing spells of binding, first men oaths sworn with iron swords bought in blood, Southron maesters scoffing at wild tales, queens dreaming of dragons, kings sealing pacts with wildfire and steel. Every choice, every promise, every death. All threads of the tapestry. At the tapestry's center, an emptiness pulsed. Cold, relentless, mournful. It knew his name. Brandon Dawit. It called. He answered. In that communion he felt no malice. The stillness was not hatred. It was the aching need for silence after too much song. It wished to sleep, yet sleep was impossible while warmth walked the earth. Thus it walked to still the warmth. A simple truth. "I will cradle you," Bran told it. "Sleep inside me. We will wait together." The stillness poured into him. He screamed, though only ravens heard. Ice drove through his heart like a burning spear reversed. His skin blistered in cold, blood freezing in veins, nerves shattering crystalline, then knitting again different, emptied of heat, filled with long forgetting. He felt himself split. Boy, raven, memory, wind, all peeling away like bark to reveal the white wood beneath. Above, the heart tree wept red sap that hissed upon the snow as it fell. The sap sizzled, steaming, circling the stump where Mira's stake stood. Frost snaked across the knives of grass that survived around the pool, encasing each blade in glass. A dull thunder rumbled from the depths, cracking the soil. Arya tensed, but the crack ceased, sealing with fresh ice so clear it shone blue. The stake glowed faint, as did the chain within Jon's casket. The runes brightened, pulling unearthly light along the links like water up a root. Night fell swift, though the sun had only begun to lower. The sky purpled, then bruised black. Stars appeared sharper than shards and the moon rose a thin sickle. Jon stood at the Godswood gate, one hand on Longclaw, the other clenched white. "If he dies, we die with him," he muttered. "No," Sansa whispered. "If he dies, we live. But into what?" Inside the grove, Bran's breath ceased steaming. His chest rose once, fell, and did not rise again. A halo of frost formed upon his lashes. In that instant, the waiting wind stilled. The candles guttered in the bailey. Hearthfires drooped to sullen embers. Every torch in Winterfell sighed out. Silence reigned. Then his eyes opened, pale, not blue, but silver-gray shot with streaks of starlight. When he inhaled again, his breath came in a plume of mist so cold it drifted down, heavy toward the earth. Roots curled around the wheels of his chair, splitting metal, lifting him until he hovered inches above the ground. The chain at Joan's feet writhed, slithering across stone like a serpent seeking its master. It coiled about Bran's waist and limbs, links fusing with the roots in an embrace neither wholly plant nor metal. Branches above bent low, forming a crown of entwined weirwood twigs upon his brow. Blood-red leaves drifted down, landing upon his shoulders, freezing to rubies against the frost that coated his cloak. He spoke, and his voice carried the hush of snowfall on a midnight plain. The circle closes. Wind exhaled at last, gentle. Fires relit themselves with meek sighs. Somewhere, a mother's baby resumed crying. Life fluttered back into Winterfell, timid but present. Jon stepped forward, tears bright in his beard. "Bran?" "I am." Bran lowered, roots releasing. The wheels cracked but held. He touched the chain now embedded in his wrist, iron and obsidian glimmering with sub-zero light. And yet not only. Mira approached next. She met his gaze unflinching. "Are you cold?" "I remember cold." He reached, brushed her cheek. Frost melted under his touch, leaving warmth. "But I am not its servant. I am its warden." Sam exhaled, half laugh, half sob. "Does this mean it's done?" Bran looked north, eyes narrowing as though reading distant runes. "Balance holds, but the stillness thrashes in its cage. It will test every link. We must forge stronger memories, deeper roots." He faced his siblings. "Will you help me?" They answered together, "Always." Snow eased. Clouds parted to reveal the hunter's constellation shining bright. The night was clear, but at the rim of the world, a curtain of green ghost light rippled, fleeting and strange, like the afterimage of a wound closing. Within Bran's veins, the stillness settled, quiet, yet awake. He felt its dreams unfurl. Endless white plains, mountains of black ice. A palace of silence where footsteps rang forever. He stood at the threshold, but did not cross. Instead, he wheeled toward the hall where men and women shivered in the newborn calm, ready to light fires anew. He, too, would build a fire, one of memory deep enough to outlast even the longest night. For now, the circle closed. But circles turn, and even stillness dreams of moving again. Kay. Night lingered over Winterfell like ink, refusing to dilute, as though the moon itself had forgotten the art of yielding to morning. Beneath the unblinking stars, torches guttered in courtyards dark with new frost, each flame hemmed in by a fragile aura of amber light that shrank whenever wind pressed against the walls. The castle's ancient stones groaned, releasing icy creaks that slipped through arrow loops and settled into empty stairwells. Even the ravens chose silence, huddled in the rookery with wings mantled tight, staring at nothing. Bran Stark sat at the heart of the Godswood, where the weirwood's red-eyed face had once watched him with the pity of centuries. Now that same carved visage seemed merely curious, its scowl softened, its cheeks wet with runoff from thawing sap. Around Bran, roots swelled out of the ground the way sea serpents push through surf, only to flatten again after each slow pulse. The chain binding those roots to his limbs glimmered without source of light, its runes shedding a pale luminescence that did not dance, did not flicker, only existed, steady as a truth that needed no proclamation. He inhaled, letting the crisp air scrape across lungs that no longer feared cold. Inside his chest, the stillness stirred. A sleeping cat of ice pressed against a hearthstone. It murmured with dreams of remote white deserts and horizons etched in starlight, but Bran gently hushed it with thoughts of warmth. Arya's awkward half-smile when she first discovered he would live, Sam's startled gratitude at each answer. Bran gave before he asked the question. Mira's laughter, echoing across a bog on a long-ago summer dawn. Memory became lullaby, and the stillness dozed. Breath out, mist spilled across his lips, sank to the soil, vanished. Breath in. He tasted distant frost beyond the shivering sea, caught the copper tang of iron-born blood spilled in a quarrel on Great Wick, felt the black scent of dragonfire raked across crumbling towers near King's Landing where Drogon's bones slept beneath rotting scaffolds. All the world's perfumes and poisons seeped through his thoughts like wine through cloth, staining him faintly but never blurring the image of who he had once been. Footsteps crunched along a pebbled path behind him. He spoke before the visitor arrived. The south gate guard changed late. Tell them not to linger so long between shifts. His voice carried across the snow as a ripple across a summer pond. Soft but unwavering, as though water had remembered how to speak stone's tongue. Jon Snow emerged from darkness beneath a crooked elm, cloak gathered against his throat, breath fuming. Ghost padded at his heel, white fur dusted with glittering frost that refused to melt. Jon studied Bran for a long moment, eyes reflecting lamplight and worry in equal measure. You see everything now? Enough. Bran turned his head, the motion slow but deliberate. But sight is not guidance. I need ears to listen, voices to speak things I should choose not to know. Natom? Jon's smile was fleeting as falling ash. Strange to find myself your voice. It has been so since you carried me on your back beside the wall. Bran's gaze shifted to the direwolf. Ghost fears I've left you behind. He smells the ice in me. Ghost's red eyes narrowed, but he did not growl. He sat upon his haunches and tilted his great head before sneezing a fine drift of hoarfrost into the air and licking his chops. Jon knelt. We had scouts from Deepwood Moat at dawn. The river along the Barrowlands froze solid overnight. They counted 5 dozen elk caught mid-drink, statues of ice now, none older than 3 years. No sign of whites. No sign of shattering either, just cold. That's why they are. Bran nodded, fingers brushing the ruined link about his wrist. A faint hum replied, felt more than heard. The stillness tests the chain. It reaches southward in slender tendrils, feeling for seams of doubt and fracture. Men who believe I have stolen their winter gods. Queens who whisper that magic belongs only to dragons. Maesters who weigh what they can measure and discard the rest. Each doubt is a crack. I must fill them with memory before ice pours through. Jon lifted a skeptical brow. With memory, I will weave story into stone. Bran gestured at the roots. Story is mortar stronger than blood. Maegor conquered by flame, Aegon by fear. But old Nan conquered you with bedtime tales. Which reign lasted longer? He let the question hang like a snowflake refusing to fall. Jon breathed through his nose. I've scarce time for riddles. Men need orders. Wives need husbands returned alive. Wintertown has provisions for 3 moons. Beyond that, folk will wander south into chaos. Chaos is a ladder, Bran murmured. But it is also a pit. We shall build steps of a different kind. He turned his palms upward and closed his eyes. Down in the crypts, Arya stalked shadows that did not yet exist. Her boots made no sound, even when stone flagged underfoot, cracked with sudden frost. A single lantern swung from a hook at her belt, but she let its light fall behind her, stepping instead by memory and by the faintest glimmer of luminous moss blooming in mortar lines. She passed the carved effigies of Stark kings, Iron Hand, Winter's Fang, the Quiet Wolf, tracing with her gaze the stone swords laid across each lap, counting chipped edges, measuring thickness, seeking weakness. Every weapon would break before Bran's chain did, she suspected, but she would count anyway. Counting kept her steady. She halted before the newest empty niche carved shallow into cold wall. A tomb awaiting Bran should his body one day outlive the power that bound him. There was room for a wheeled bier and for an inscription, yet none had been chiseled. No one dared decide what name he would bear. Bran the Broken? Bran the Bound? The Warden of Stillness? Those names felt as incomplete as a sword without an edge. Arya touched the placeholder stone. It was smooth, chill, humming faintly. Echo of the power sealing the god above. I won't carve your epitaph, she muttered, until I know what you become. From behind the nearest pillar, Gendry's voice answered, husky with smithy soot. Then carve mine instead. Less waiting. He stepped into view, black hair plastered to his brow. He must have hurried from his forge, carrying heat in his blood. I finished the arrowheads, Lady Sansa asked. Dragonglass core, steel jacket. They ring like silver when struck. Arya offered half a wolfish grin. Silver breaks easy. So does dulled iron. Gendry handed her a small cloth bundle. You'll like these better than counting ghosts. They cut cold air clean. She untied the string, exposing 4 long, narrow blades, slender as needles, edges jingled with a wicked gleam. These are no arrowheads. Bolts. He tugged a lock of hair from his eyes. For the small crossbow you keep under the mattress. I measured the groove without you knowing. No? Her grin widened and vanished. She studied a blade under mosslight. I never thanked you for staying. Gendry shrugged. River lords can rule themselves. They only wanted a name to follow. Easier to follow from the forge here. He brushed ash from his forearm. Besides, someone's got to make sure you eat. She slid the blades back into the cloth. I eat. When you remember. He tilted his chin. Worrying gnaws more than salt pork does. Arya returned the bundle. I'll use them soon enough. Against what? He peered into her eyes. The dead lie still. The living freeze, but don't fight. Still, things can stir when no one's watching. She flexed her gloved fingers. Something's coming. Bran feels it. I itch for its name. Gendry frowned, stepping closer until their breaths mingled white. I itch for spring. He touched her hand, rough palm warming her leather. Will that name do? She met his gaze, and for a moment the crypt's cold retreated. She felt the throb of his pulse through his wrist, fast alive, and wondered whether Bran could hear it above ground. A swirl of guilt passed, then settled like dust. Bran had surrendered warmth. Arya had not. She pressed her other hand over Gendry's, then stepped away because that, too, was still who she was. We'll hunt answers, she promised, before winter steals them. He nodded, accepting the distance. She gave him a soft parting glance and slipped back into the corridor, silent as snowfall on feather grass. Behind her the lantern swayed, chasing her shadow along walls, carved with wolves whose stone eyes flashed briefly, as though they approved. Atop the eastern rampart, Sansa Stark braced both hands against frost-rimed merlons, chin tucked into a linen scarf dyed the color of fresh-cut holly. Winter's gusts tugged the fabric, but she held steady, surveying the snow-choked expanse between castle and outer trenches where half-burned siege equipment poked like ribs from a corpse. The ebony watchtowers beyond the moat lay serene under moonlight, unvisited by enemy or guest. She might have called it peace if peace had not tasted so strongly of dread. Below, figures hustled along catwalks and through gatehouses. Watch rotations, smith apprentices hauling coal, kitchen boys carting sacks of turnips to cellars scraping bottom. Sansa counted them unconsciously. Too few. Always too few. War's harvest had stripped Winterfell of many strong backs. You'll freeze your fingers off. Tyrion Lannister's approach was quiet but not stealthy. The way he cleared his throat gave warning enough. I might envy your stoicism if my own fingers weren't already planning mutiny. Sansa kept her eyes on the landscape. Then wear thicker gloves. Your hand to a queen whose hands burn hotter than most hearths. She can spare coal. Now to me. Tyrion raised a brow. Silver frost clinging to short beard whiskers. She spares everything but smiles these days. He rested stubby forearms on the stone. And you, Lady of Winterfell? My smiles are rationed like grain. Let me barter for one. He produced a small glass bottle from his pocket, swirling dark amber. Eagle's tears, distilled in Liss, smuggled through 3 wars, aged under a silk merchant's bed. Sansa side-eyed him. It's poison, no doubt. Only to judgment. He tipped back a swallow, grimaced before the burn subsided, then proffered the bottle. She did not reach. What do you want? She asked. Conversation uncluttered by counsel. He corked the flask. And perhaps your insight. Our brother. Pardon, your brother. Sits in a frozen garden communing with gods no one else hears. Men whisper he has bound himself to a demon. He has. Sansa folded her arms. But we asked him to, when we begged him to save us from the Night King. Does debt surprise you? Not debt, denial. Tyrion's breath clouded. They fear him. They fear dragons too. She watched a lantern flicker to life near the smithy. Fear is cost of protection. Tyrion's exhale whistled. Cost climbs. Your coffers shrink. This castle will pay whatever sum is asked. Her tone allowed no argument. Yet Tyrion watched her with narrowed eyes, calculating. Gold cannot soothe hunger forever. Trade caravans from the Reach haven't crossed Moat Cailin in weeks. The Mander froze at its mouth. Soon, bread riots will devour Old Town. Then move north with the refugees who outrun them. Winter is coming, he mocked gently, and you married the man who lives in its heart. She turned at last, gaze keen. Then we must make winter worth the fear. If the realms suffer cold regardless, they should prefer it at Bran's hand, and not anarchy's. How? Tyrion asked. Stories, Sansa said, echoing Bran's notion though she had not heard him speak it tonight. And alliances told by them. Tyrion smiled around Frost. I smell a queen's play. I smell survival. She faced outward again. Ride at first light to the twins. The late Lord Walder's heirs crave legitimacy. Tell them the stillness spares those who swear loyalty. Plant a column of memory in their hall. Then ride to Seaguard. To Saltpans. To each lord who clings to thawed coasts. Weave them into warmth. If they refuse, they'll freeze sooner. No. Tyrion saluted with his bottle. Wine in winter warms the belly. A war of words warms the realm. I'll need parchment and good couriers. You'll have them. She tapped ice from her gauntlet and strode away, leaving the dwarf blinking owl-like after her. Tyrion shook his head, took another swallow, and muttered, May the gods pity whomever stands between a Stark and her season. Below Winterfell's southern wall, Samwell Tarly crouched beneath an awning of cracked slate, pages strewn across a makeshift table of ice-rimmed crates. He wore 3 cloaks, brown, black, and a hide of shaggy elk stitched by Gilly. And yet his teeth clattered like dice each time a gust crawled beneath the tent flap. One mitten held a quill. The other cradled a coal-heated stone he shifted from palm to palm to keep fingers nimble. Ink froze if he paused too long. He copied by lamplight runes from a scroll older than Old Town's spires, mapping them onto fresh calfskin in orderly rows. Each rune he drew, he whispered, name, meaning, caution. Some symbols carried warnings sharper than blades. This one, heartbeat undone, that soul forgetting. None were complete on their own. Combined, they built language older than speech. He suspected it was the language Bran now spoke in silence. Gilly sat nearby, coaxing little Sam to repeat the maester's alphabet. Arcone, Belgar, Caraxes. Little Sam giggled when his breath fogged before each letter, chasing the wisps with mittened hands. His laughter skated across Samwell's nerves, simultaneously joyous and fragile. Sam pressed ink into parchment more firmly to anchor himself. Mira Reed entered, snow sliding from her hood in feathery drifts. The crate of hack silver you asked for, she announced, hefting a knotted sack onto the crates. Where do you want it? Sam blinked. Silver? That was for experiment. She peeled back the sack. Raw silver nuggets and broken arm rings caught lantern light. If dragon glass and steel sing, what does silver do? Sam swallowed. Some tales say a were-king of Skagos forged a silver horn to command giants. Mira tugged gloves off with her teeth, then let silver ring again. She poured the pieces into a copper cauldron Sam used for heating ink. Melt it. Inlay runes around the chain maybe. Fill cracks with moon metal. Sam stared. I can't. Yes, Mira said. You can. You read languages dead since before mine. Melt silver. Her tone left no space for failure. Sam looked into her bog-green eyes and saw the insistence of swamplands where life clung stubbornly to mud. He exhaled. I'll need flux finer coals. Coming. She vanished back into the snow. Gilly raised a brow. She's fiercer than cold. Sam leveled quill to parchment. So must we be. He dipped again, drew another rune, whispering its name into the hush. Memory like silver would hold what flesh alone could not. Days layered upon nights until the calendar lost significance. Instead of the 12th day of the 3rd moon, folk spoke of the dawn when frost swallowed the bell tower at White Harbor, or the dusk the sky cracked green over the Wolfswood. Each hour brought a new omen carved by cold. Blossoms of hoarfrost blooming inside lantern glass, sea spray freezing in arcs that never collapsed, breath turning to powder mid-speech. Yet amid these marvels, Winterfell pulsed with determined life. At Bran's bidding, Jon dispatched ravens carrying charcoal drawings, simple images of chains, binding a crown of thorns beneath a heart tree. Alongside each drawing, a single phrase: memory holds the cold. No heraldry, no demand, no threat. Yet those who received the message posted it over hearths and doorways. Within a fortnight, peasants in lonely alder farms whispered prayers to the Chain King, while sailors on the narrow sea carved runes into masts, saying they could feel a hush in their dreams offering safe passage. Fear sank roots, and from fear grew a kind of faith. In the castle, Mira and Sam forged silver inlays that wound along Bran's bindings like rivulets of moonlight. They etched runes into each plate, then hammered the plates to roots that now cradled Bran's chair like a living cradle. When finished, Sam collapsed on snow-dusted boards, hands blistered, chest wheezing. Mira sank beside him, pressed a flask of spruce tea to his lips. "For tomorrow," she said when he sipped. "More silver." Sam groaned. "Silver mines freeze. We'll run short." "Never." She pointed skyward. Icicles clung to the eaves like polished lances. The groan melts to forge new shapes. Sam raised a brow at her wordplay, then grinned despite fatigue. "You sound like Bran." "Perhaps he sounds like us," she replied. Bran, listening through weirwood, smiled unseen. Far to the east, on the edge of shaggy ridges, where the last river clawed its way through granite gullies, a solitary ancient watchtower named Old Shiver kept vigil, manned by 5 remnants of the Night's Watch, and twice that number of wildlings who refused the Southron label. Its fires stayed lit out of habit more than hope. On a night when the wind keened high, those watchers saw the horizon rip in 3 silent lightning bolts of emerald, and felt frost crawl across their boots in seconds. They barred the gates and prayed. Bran felt their terror, but he also felt the frost part around the tower, swirling yet not entering. The chain's memory encompassed Old Shiver because 100 years earlier the tower's stones had sheltered an infant stark bastard, whose lullaby came from the same heart tree now holding Bran. Memory held cold at bay. Yet beyond the memory's reach, the stillness twitched. Bran waked in the pre-dawn with a gasp, frost creasing his breath. He sent ravens south to every holdfast, build fires of elderwood, sing old songs, recall names carved on tombstones. He sensed confusion as the messages arrived, but fires were built, songs sung. The cold eased. Deep in a seldom-used library off the Second Bailey, Tyrion unrolled a map drawn by cartographers of Pentos rather than Westeros. It depicted currents, not roads, currents of trade, rumor, migration. Each swirl of colored ink represented grain barges, timber rafts, ivory shipments, galleys bearing sellswards. The ink bled where shipping lanes had ceased, black lagoons where cold blocked sea lanes, red scars where war still burned along the stepstones. Sansa stood opposite him, arms folded. "We'll prescribe memory as brandy and medicine," Tyrion said. "But memory alone feeds no bellies. You promised caravans. I promised a plan." He tapped a route. Old Town to White Harbor, hugging the coast via shallow drafted cogs built in lists, insulated cargo holds warmed by braziers. If ice forgets water can flow, perhaps water can carry warmth north. Sansa eyed the ink. White Harbor froze. Ships crack when tide heaves. Nasernen, then cut the ice. He slid a miniature golden anchor across the map. Geistord. Blast powder loaded on skids. Black powder your smiths perfected to fight undead. Detonate channels, guide barges in. Winter claims, man reclaims? Sansa's expression remained guarded. Explosions risk harbor walls, risk fishermen's lives. Risk is coin. Tyrion met her gaze. Spend none, and you purchase nothing. She regarded him, then exhaled. Do it. But the Mander? The fleet may not cross. Tyrion's eyes glittered. I know a dragon rider who owes us trust. He placed a pewter dragon atop the route, then withdrew his hand. If she flies to melt channels days before the fleet departs. Sansa's lip tightened. She withdraws loyalty each day we speak of memory instead of thrones. Then remind her she sits alive because a Stark dagger pierced ice, and a Stark chain now binds it. Sansa shut her eyes briefly. Arrange your counsel, I'll speak with her. They parted without courtesy, but with mutual purpose. Daenerys Targaryen no longer occupied the Queen's Tower. She had taken a modest suite above the old smithy, where Forge's heat drove away chill. Still, warmth failed to anchor her dreams. Night after night, she wandered corridors of red stone dripping with blood, hearing bells toll over a city gone silent, but for crackling flame. When she woke mid-scream, her handmaids pretended not to have heard. She stood at a balcony, watching sparks fly from Gendry's hammers. The hammering comforted her. It echoed Drogo's war drums, Rhaegal's heartbeats when he soared, Jorah's gentle coaxing when she doubted her own fire. Yet it could not fill the silence left by dragons. Drogon's skeleton lay miles south, Viserion's dust scattered in black snow. Rhaegal lost to the sea. She stroked the stone balustrade, feeling its chill through gloves. A knock. Grey Worm entered, helm under his arm. Tyrion Lannister requests audience. She gestured. He stepped aside, allowing Tyrion to limbo under the low lintel with a rustle of scrolls and stale wine. He bowed. Your Grace. His breath frosted. She offered no greeting. Your message said urgent. Caravans from the south require safe passage. Winter freezes harbors. We need fire. He stepped to the balcony, squinting at sparks leaping from the forge. I ask you provide it. Daenerys followed his gaze. I have no dragons. But you remain the dragon. Tyrion's voice lowered. Azor Ahai reborn. Should prophecy still matter? You once walked into a pyre and emerged unburnt with new life. Fire obeys you even when scale and wing fail. She studied her gloved palm, extended it over the balcony torch. Flame leaned toward her, as though the wick were windblown. Parlor trick. To a starving port, it's salvation. Tyrion lifted a scroll. We ask you melt a corridor through ice, along the Mander's mouth. 5 days' travel. Astride a wyvern would carve a safe lane wide as sunlit hope. She flinched at the mention of wyverns. They were beasts of the Shadowlands she had never seen. Yet the flicker of war blood lit her eyes. And if I refuse, ask Bran the Bound to do it. Tyrion's jaw worked. Bran's power holds cold. It doesn't release heat. He would still the river altogether. Ships would never sail. We require opposites to dance, not one step alone. Pharaoh. Daenerys turned to Grey Worm. Leave us. When he hesitated, she nodded once. He obeyed. She faced Tyrion again. Every time I wield fire, men recall King's Landing. And every time we shiver, we recall despair. Let memory cut 2 ways. Fire once destroyed, now fire sustains. He held her gaze. Write that song. She stared past him, to the forge yard where Gendry raised a glowing run spear to cool in snow. Frost hissed, steam swirled. I will go, she said at last. But not for songs. For your people then, Tyrion offered. For atonement. She strode toward the hearthstone and snatched a blaze naked-handed. Flame wreathed her fingers, yet did not scorch. She closed her fist. The flame died like a sated beast. Tyrion's lips parted in awe. May I borrow that trick? She threw him a brittle smile. Life through fire first. She donned a fur-lined cloak of dark crimson. I fly at dawn. Tyrion allowed himself a long breath after she disappeared behind curtains. The flame in the hearth regained ordinary shape, but he felt its heat linger in the air stronger than before. Outside Winterfell, the first aurora of the season painted the sky, a wavering veil of ice green, violet, and pale gold. Bran raised his gaze to it, listening to the stillness hush in reverence. The spectral lights were the cold's own dream-given color. For a moment even Bran, Wharton though he was, marveled at its beauty. Like lace cut from the night's finest cloth. Yet he sensed within those ripples a single tremor that did not belong. A fissure in memory, a forgetting. He looked west, beyond shadowed hills, to a tor nestled between the lonely hills, where no raven flew. There, a small circle of stones older than the first keep shivered, half breaking free from snowpack. No tales remained of those stones. Thus they lay outside memory's chain. The stillness probed, prying at cracks. Bran closed his eyes. He reached across roots threading deep, sought a memory to pour over the stones. A wedding at dawn, a birth fought through night, a haunting of songs. He found none. The circle had witnessed life, but none to carve tales. A hole. He exhaled frost and summoned Mira with a silent pulse through roots. She arrived breathless minutes later. Spear slung. What omen? Stone circle. No story shields it. Bran gestured northwest. We must write one before cold does. Mira's brows knit. Write how? Go there. Leave. Leave prints, leave laughter, leave blood if need be. Plant a tale in the ground. She chewed her lip. Alone? With company whose hearts beat strong. Arya, Gendry, the Crannogman. Bran looked to the Godswood path where reeds rustled, the wind lay calm. I will hold the cold back, but not forever. We have one night. Now? Mira considered. Then we leave now. She touched the chain ring at his wrist. Stay steady, Bran of many lives. He caught her forearm, a gesture as old as friendship. Return with dawn. He passed something small into her palm. A smooth stone of dragonglass etched with a single rune that meant anchor. Bury this at the circle's heart. Memory will root. She shouldered her spear. We'll dig deep. She vanished among trunks, silent as dewfall. Arya met Mira in the courtyard where Gendry waited, sharpening one of the new bolts. 2 Crannogmen also stood ready, thin as reeds, wearing cloaks mottled green and white. They spoke no names but nodded as though old comrades. We travel west, Mira said, to a circle of stones the old songs forgot. We plant a story before ice claims it. Gendry frowned. Plant how? Stories grow slower than trees. Tonight, Mira answered. We fool time. Arya's eyes lit. I like fooling giants. Why not time? They stole from Winterfell under a auroral glow. 4 shadows moving swift across snow, where each footstep crunched with tiny screams of ice. Ghost trailed them to the gate then turned back, duty to Jon outweighing adventure. Outside the world felt vast and brittle. Trees bowed as though expecting them. Hours passed. The lights above writhed, casting tinted shadows that danced over ridges like ghosts of northern kings, rising to witness. The travelers spoke little. Breath steamed, hooves of their borrowed palfreys puffed frost dust. Once, a herd of caribou stampeded across a frozen creek, spooked by the colored sky. The travelers pressed on. Toward midnight, they reached the Tor. 12 pale stones jutted from drifts, forming an oval broken on the north side, where one monolith had shattered centuries earlier. Snow filled the gap like mortar in a missing tooth. Mira dismounted, spear butt first into snowbank. Circle stands, she murmured. No voices here. Arya slipped inside, acutely aware of the hush. Even the wind muted, as though muffled by wool. When she breathed, her exhale fell straight to the ground. Gendry tied the horses to a frost-dead shrub. Errant circles for rituals? His voice sounded dull, swallowed by silence. Mira unpacked a satchel of birch shavings. So we'll do one. She knelt, arranged kindling at the center. Arya joined, striking steel against flint. Spark flew, died instantly. "No air," Arya muttered. "Too still," Mira agreed. She drew her dagger and cut her palm. Blood dripped onto shavings, steaming. The steam coiled upward, creating current. Arya struck again. This time the spark took. Flame hissed, small and hungry. Gendry fed it slivers of seasoned oak he'd strapped to his saddle. The Cranagman produced dried frog spawn in cloth pouches, sprinkling it into the fire. The spawn popped, releasing oily vapor that smelled of peat and autumn reeds. Above, the Aurora's ribbons gathered, swirling faster as though curious. Arya carved a shallow circle in snow about the fire. Then another, forming the shapes of a ghost-eyed owl and a leaping wolf. Mira hummed an old neck lullaby that wound through reeds each dusk, a song Jojen once loved. Gendry hammered the butt of his spear on stone in steady rhythm, forging beat into memory. The Cranagman began a chant in a tongue Arya never heard, croaking syllables, part frog, part crow. Combined, the sounds twined around flames, thickening air. Heat rose. Snow retreated from the inner ring, revealing frozen grass like green glass. The stones pulsed faintly, runes appearing where none had been, as though Chisel finally awakened. Arya stood, arms wide, and recited the names of each friend she had lost. Yoren, Gendry's master, Hot Pie's brother, Syrio Forel, Lady Crane, Beric, Thoros, Sandor. She let those names fill the gaps between Mira's lullaby and the Cranagman's croaks. She added her father's name last, then her mother's, then Robb's, Rickon's, Hodor's. Each name anchored her to herself, heavy yet needed. Gendry spoke next. Soft tales of the forge, of laughter over cheap ale at the inn near the coast road, of Arya disguised as a boy spitting roast pigeon grease and calling him stupid. He laughed, voice shaking. Mira broke into tears partway through Jojen's story. How he'd danced balancing on one stump at Greencairn to entertain travelers seeking a ferry. The Cranagmen answered by pricking their thumbs, flicking blood into fire with every verse of their chant. Hours passed. Flame grew tall, fed by memory, by heat, by blood. It cast wild silhouettes on stones now bearing shapes of reeds and wolves intertwined. Aurora light funneled downward in a single beam, bathing the stone ring in shifting green. Snow outside the oval melted in a perfect corridor 5 yards wide, revealing earth that drank the runoff greedily. Above, stars scattered like spilled salt, bright in the moonless void. At last, Mira drew Bran's dragonglass stone from her pouch. It glimmered with internal frost. She knelt at the north gap where the broken monolith lay shattered. She buried the anchor stone at the gap's heart, covering it with snow laced in her own blood and ash from the fire. Then she stood and raised her spear. "It is done," she declared. Wind returned, sweeping across the tor. Fire guttered, then dimmed, leaving coals. The aurora split, its colors bleeding into stars. In the hush that followed, something clicked, like a key turning in a lock. Stone ring exhaled. Frost blossomed outward, but halted at the memory corridor, curving outward, then dissipating. Gendry exhaled. Did we win? Arya felt the world's hush lighten, as though a held breath released. For tonight. They stamped snow, doused coals, mounted. As they rode, the Cranagmen spoke in low conversation of how no frost formed on their cloaks, how their horses' hooves did not skid on black ice. Memory stitched warmth along their path, all the way back to Winterfell. Bran welcomed their return at dawn. He felt the anchor root into the earth miles away, felt the cold swirl, confused, meeting story where emptiness once lay. It recoiled, redirected northward toward older wounds. Bran exhaled a plume of satisfaction and allowed himself the luxury of closing his eyes for a moment, listening to bloodless silence settle into slumber, deep inside. Yet as he rested, a tremor quivered along the chain. Subtle, insistent, a memory not his surfaced. The first night King screaming beneath dragonglass. The moment mercy fled his heart. Bran's own heart flickered. The stillness prodded, hungry for reason to escape. Bran tightened mental grasp, clamping thought like iron gates. Not yet, he whispered. Sleep. But it obeyed, restless. He opened his eyes. Before him knelt Mira, cheeks raw from windburn, hair strung with frost lace. It's planted, she said, voice hoarse. Bran reached, brushed her temple. Warmth passed from memory to skin. Color returned to her cheeks. Thank you. She nodded, leaning her forehead briefly against his knuckles. More circles will need stories. Yes, Bran breathed. All the forgotten corners. Arya stepped forward, snow crunching. We'll map them, turn blank spaces into tales. Not quick, Bran cautioned. Each story must root deep. Slow as knives, brother. Arya tapped her dagger's hilt. Gendry crossed arms. Knives carve faster than quills. Sam entered behind them, eyes rimmed red with fatigue. Scroll under arm. Quills carve memory into minds. I think better with both. He offered the scroll to Bran. I found mention of 9 other stone rings beyond the neck. None recorded in Citadel charts, only in sailor myths and reed bog songs. Could be more. Megnsau. Bran skimmed parchment without eyes. We'll need singers, masons, priests. He imagined caravans bearing warmth, carrying stories south as Tyrion arranged treaties. He imagined Daenerys melting ice corridors even now. Threads of memory wove themselves into tapestry. Yet at each gap between threads, stillness patiently waited. Tell Sansa, he said. Call a gathering of voice. Bards, septons, even mummers. Offer coin and shelter. The North will host the long telling. While snow piles outside, we will inscribe inside. Sam grinned. A festival in winter. An answer to fear, Bran said. He closed his eyes again. Through the chain he heard distant bells of White Harbor ring to greet sunrise, though no sunrise yet lit horizon. Through roots he felt the earth warm in pockets around fires just ignited. Fires fed by blocky lumps of peat, by barrels of whale oil sent from Skagos in sledges guided by lantern light. Memory lit each flame. Yet somewhere far north beyond the wall, an ice spire cracked, releasing a tone high as glass. Bran felt the vibration. The stillness inside him stirred, recognizing kin. Bran whispered to it, weaving lullabies of living heartbeats. He conjured the echo of Mira's laugh, the smith beat of Gendry's hammer, the hush of Sam's pen strokes, the fierce whisper of Sansa bargaining, the roar of Jon's vow. Around those sounds he wrapped iron letters, runes of silver, chains of root and story. The stillness sighed, subdued, for now. Bran opened his eyes to the godswood, where snowflakes fell slow, each crystal unique, each silent. He inhaled, feeling their pattern, fractals branching endlessly, never repeating, like stories. He smiled. Morning did not dawn so much as mellow, a faint illumination behind low clouds. Daenerys Targaryen rode a wyvern, borrowed from Korth traders, scarlet, unruly, wings ragged from decades in basements. She mounted it on the rookery tower and launched into gray glare. The beast shrieked, but flame obeyed her whispered command. She banked southwest, riding thermals conjured by her own heat. Below, peasants paused in fields, marveling at a dragon shape streaking copper through dawn. As she flew, ice on the mander cracked in a wake of shimmering water. Her heart ached as each exhale of dragon fire reminded her of children lost, but she carved lanes of living river all the same. Barges laden with grain queued behind giant flows, oarsmen cheering as channels widened. On the riverbanks, folk knelt. They did not chant Emhisa this time. They whispered, Dragon of the North, and they lit braziers shaped as links of chain to honor the pact between fire and frost. Rumor traveled swift. Back at Winterfell, Tyrion watched mummers pour through gates, juggling torches, singing bawdy verses about summer wine thawing winter hearts. He smirked. The world ends and men invent jokes. Jon beside him replied, Laughter is weapon as sharp as steel. He watched small folk gather near a stage being hastily constructed from wagon beds. But laughter cannot stop another Night King. We have a Night King, Tyrion said, and he loves jokes. He handed John a folded parchment, especially long ones. John unfolded, handbill announcing the first gathering of voice, to last 40 days, longer if stories endure. He traced Bran's seal at bottom. Three-eyed raven wrapped in chain of roots. 40 days, John mused. Longer than Lent. Tyrion eyed him. Penitent are we? Always. John folded the parchment. But I doubt winter will grant 40 days of peace. Then occupy its mind. Tyrion spread arms. A 5-hour jape distracts even gods. Or so we plan. John studied the stage where children hammered planks. We'd best be amusing. Let us start rehearsal. Tyrion tucked his hands into sleeves and strode off. John watched him, feeling weight of sword heavy at hip, yet lighter in heart than it had been yesterday. Maybe, he thought, tomorrow could be lighter still. Night fell again, purple, cold, but different. Lanterns rimmed every parapet now, their flames tinted silver by powdered runes. Sam had ground this very afternoon. Music drifted from the yard, drums of summer islanders, spindle-shanked flutes of bravos, the low thrum of sisters' shell horns. Voices harmonized under archways. Ballads of Nemiria's 1,000 ships, lullabies of Giscar slave women, nonsense reels from small folk of Cracklaw Point. Winterfell became a hive of sound, buzzing warmth into stone. Bran heard it all, every note, every heartbeat quickening at the taste of cider, every sigh of a memory surfacing beneath melody. The stillness within grumbled, uneasy, annoyed like an old man denied sleep by raucous tavern songs. Bran smiled. Let it be annoyed. Annoyance meant it listened. He closed his eyes and wove each tune into silver threads through the chain, layering them like braids in a girl's hair. The chain glowed faintly, turning pale violet beneath aurora swirls. Roots quivered, absorbing music like water. Somewhere north, ice spires quieted their trembling. 3 days into the festival, a troop of iron-born skulls performed a saga of the drowned god tricked by the storm god into losing his voice. The singer, a burly woman with sea salt dreadlocks, belted verses so raw her throat bled, the blood glistening black under torchlight. Bran watched through open hall doors. He felt the stillness lean into each verse, intrigued by sorrow of drowned gods. Their still hush unending. Sensing hazard, Bran signaled Sam. Sam poured molten silver into tiny molds shaped like tears. He cooled them in snow, handed them to infants in the crowd who rattled them joyfully, bursting the hush. The stillness retreated. Bran learned. Sorrow can summon cold, joy disperses. On the 7th morning, Daenerys returned, wyverns steaming. She alit in the godswood, cloak scorched, eyes ablaze. Bran welcomed her with nod. She knelt in snow. The river flows, she said. Ships sail. Frost melted in her footsteps. Bran touched her gloved hand. Fire and ice crackled. You have woven a thread stronger than prophecy. She met his star-shot gaze. Not enough. She glanced at Chain. Teach me runes. He inclined his head. Fire must read its counterpart. He beckoned Sam. Show her. Sam approached, wide-eyed. Daenerys smiled faintly. A dragon queen learning from an ex-watchman sounded like a tale children would never believe. The world was rewriting its rules. Even as stories bred warmth, scouts reported renewed frost along the Bay of Seals. Sansa convened council. Bran sat at head, eyes clouding with visions. He saw raiders from Hardhome dragging sledges of black ice inscribed with unknown runes. Runic shapes cut not by human hand nor child's blade. The ice hummed, calling to the stillness. Bran stiffened. Balance tilted. We must intercept, he said. Jon volunteered before others could. I've friends among the free folk. We ride at dusk. Arya insisted on joining. Someone must watch your back. Gendry followed, vowing to test silver lances. Mira strapped bog bombs of frog spawn oil to sledges. Sam packed ruined parchments to brandish like talismans. Daenerys Wyvern glared, restless. Bran shook his head. Too conspicuous. She accepted, reluctantly. They departed under waning moon, a column of mixed north blood and south fire, headed northeast. Bran remained, heart tethered to theirs through chain, thread, dream. He guided them unseen, whispering across roots. The stillness inside him watched. 5 days of hard ride brought the hunting party to a shattered glacier jutting into the bay. There they saw raiders, gaunt men and women with eyes rimmed violet by frostbite, chanting around slabs of ice shaped like monoliths. Arya crept closer, noting each monolith bore swirling lines glowing faint cyan. Sam consulted his scroll, mouth drying. Not ruins but runes older than children's script, language of stillness itself. Before he could warn, wine shrieked. The monoliths vibrated, splitting into shards that levitated, then spun into a vortex. Frost spiraled outward, thicker than any witnessed since the long night. The raiders prostrated themselves. Jon drew Longclaw. Time for subtlety ends. He charged. Gendry lobbed silver-laced spears. They shattered against shards, each explosion sparking violet lightning that briefly halted the vortex. Arya darted among raiders, cutting throats swift, mercy strokes to end the thrall. Mira hurled frog spawn bombs. They burst into sticky fire that clung to ice, slowing spin. Sam planted parchment, chanting runes taught by Bran. Paper glowed sulfur yellow, repelling shards. But the vortex screamed, dissonant. Ice crashed down, slicing sledges. Wind knocked Sam flat. Scrolls scattered. A shard sliced Gendry's arm, drawing blood that froze mid-drip. Arya fetched him behind a boulder, binding wound with boiled leather. Jon battled forward, cloak whipping. He reached the eye, an obelisk of pure ice where 2 pale hands gripped the base. A living raider bound by unknown force. She looked upon Jon with pleading blue eyes, lips cracked. The ice tried to swallow her heart first, not yet killing her. Jon swung Longclaw, cleaving ice arm. The sword's dragon glass core shattered the obelisk. A shockwave rippled. Bran, miles away, cried out. The stillness inside him howled, pain or rage. It mattered not. Bran clenched chain. Roots hammered ground, threatening to split. He infused memory. Arya's first kill, Jon's vow at the wall, Sam's trembling courage at the fist. Mira dragging him through blizzard, Gendry forging hope in steel. The howling ceased, cold recoiled. At the glacier, shards dropped. Wind calmed. The woman slumped, alive. Raiders fled or surrendered. The ice? Runic monoliths, melted, turning to puddles that steamed then refroze as harmless frost. Jon hefted the survivor. Her eyes flickered normal brown. Name? She coughed ice dust. Alise Karstark. She shivered violently. They promised warmth, if I served the White Dream. Sam breathed hard. White Dream? She nodded. A voice in snow. Said winter had no king now. Needed children to carry crown. She sobbed. I believed. Forgive. Jon wrapped her in his cloak. The king exists, and he is mercy. He glanced skyward, where Aurora traced a gentle swirl. Bran felt the tremor fade. The stillness sulked, but boundary held. He opened eyes to find Sansa before him, face pale. I felt the ground shake, she whispered. It shakes each time men forget stories. Bran's voice was low. We must teach faster. Sansa nodded, stepping closer. Then give me every tale left untold. She touched his chain. I'll weave them into law. Weeks passed, measured by songs rather than days. The festival extended, spilling laughter into midwinter. Caravans arrived bearing wheat, salted mutton, barrels of mead. Ships navigated river channels. Daenerys kept thawed with periodic flights. The realms found uneasy rhythm. Freeze and thaw, hush and story, dread and dance. Yet Bran's dreams disclosed brewing storms. In frostbitten caves under Skagos, shapeless hisses plotted. In cryptic ruins beneath Old Town's sewers, maesters uncovered glass candles singing new notes. Magic woke everywhere. Restless that one boy held such balance. Balance demanded tension. Bran resolved. he would not remain a root-bound monarch alone. He called Sam, Tyrion, Daenerys, Sansa, Jon, Arya, Mira, Dutton. They gathered beneath the heart tree under starlit hush. "I cannot be chain and sail both," Bran began. "The stillness strains. Stories dampen but do not dissolve. We need guardians, tellers who roam, forge memory where blankness grows." Jon stepped forward. "A brotherhood." "A fellowship," Bran corrected. "Bound not by oath, but by purpose. The circle of memory." He looked at each. "Carry runes, songs, fire, hammer, spear, dagger, quill. Travel. Write winter's new law by walking it." Tyrion smirked. "A traveling circus of saviors." "A tapestry," Bran said. "More threads. Stronger weave." He produced tiny chain links, each etched with rune of remembrance. He tossed one to each. Silver for Sam, ironwood for Mira, Valyrian steel for Jon, iceglass for Daenerys, jade for Tyrion, obsidian for Arya, mother of pearl for Sansa. "Lock them when next we meet. Until then, weave." Wind whispered through leaves. Each member closed fist around link, feeling faint hum of memory. Bran's heartbeat echoing inside metal. Responsibility weighed yet emboldened. They parted under Aurora that night. Some to ships, some to sledges, some to sky. Bran watched through ravens until horizon swallowed them. Then he faced the heart tree. "You will stand alone," the weirwood whispered in mind silence. "No," Bran replied. "I stand at center of wheel turning." "But wheels crush those at hubs," the old wood warned. "Let them learn to dance." Bran touched chain. Sparks of story rose into night, merging with lights. Inside his chest, stillness listened, patient. It understood circles, their inevitability, their promise of return. It waited for cracks where memory faded. Bran felt its patience and offered his own. "We have 5 hours of story left. Friend, let us see who tires first." And in Winterfell, songs carried on breath of crowds into the Godswood, weaving new legends that might one day outlive the oldest ice. If only memory proved the stronger dream. One. Bye. Moonlight veiled Winterfell beneath a shimmering gauze of frost, and for the first time in weeks the aurora did not stir. The sky lay still, a hard canvas of black velvet pricked with icy starlight. Silent, watchful, too pristine to trust. Bran Stark sensed it in the marrow of the roots that held him. A hush coiled tight as a winter spring, ready to snap. Somewhere far beyond the walls a crack sounded, faint as a splinter of glass. The stillness inside him lifted its head, sniffing at the emptiness where song had briefly slept. He sifted through the threads of his companions, reaching first for Jon. A bright ember of determination trekking through knee-deep drifts, north of the Bay of Seals, Longclaw humming faintly at his side, the rescued Alice Karstark dozing on a sled behind him. They would reach Last Hearth by noon tomorrow. And Jon rehearsed words of pardon in his mind, though he hardly trusted his own authority. Bran soothed his brother's doubts with a flicker of distant warmth, the smell of mulled wine in the Wintertown tavern, the echo of Robb's laughter when the boys had raced ponies round the Godswood in summers faded. Jon's shoulders unclenched. He drifted next to Sansa Tar. She stood on the ramparts poised before a crowd of southern traders, her cloak of direwolf white sewn with silver links that glinted beneath lanterns. Her voice rose, fluting clear above the rattle of banners, promising grain for stone, song for silence, justice for loyalty. The merchants listened, some with hands shaking in their sleeves, but they listened. Memory rooted one breath deeper. Southward he found Tyrion guiding a cavalcade toward the Twins. 30 wagons groaning with barrels of distilled spirits, silver rune-stamped seals melted on every cask. The dwarf sat swaddled in furs on the lead coach, reciting doggerel to keep the cold from stealing conversation. Tales of a Lannister fool who outdrank a giant and a goat that swallowed a Valyrian dagger, only to pick its teeth with the hilt. The drivers chuckled. Their breath fogged and drifted into sparks that winked out before touching the ground. Song. Small, but song. Arya and Gendry rode the eastern coast. tracing shoreline villages too poor to dream of festivals. They left each hamlet with something broken now mended. A wheel patched, a cracked mast re-riveted. A new smithy hearth lit with coals stamped by runes Sam had sketched in charcoal. At each campfire, Arya told the story of a girl who killed darkness with a silver-eyed blade, never naming herself, never needing to. Children repeated the tale in whispers long after the riders vanished, and cries of fear subsided for a night. Mira skirted the neck with her crannogman, launching reed-skin coracles in blackwater channels, mapping currents Bran had never seen. She planted anchor stones in fog-shrouded clearings, each sealed beneath a cairn of river stones. Under moonrise she sang to lost Jojen, and the marsh answered with flickers of ghost light. The stillness recoiled. Sam sailed down the ghost lanes of the White Knife, aboard a flat-bottomed skiff, piled with tomes. Gilly steered, little Sam clutching a silver bell that chimed softly each time the hull nudged ice. Sam muttered the runes he had learned, binding letters to rhythm. Every time his quill scratched, frost thawed along the gunwale, as though heat radiated from language alone. On deck, a dozen young scribes charmed from Old Town copied his pages by lamplight, fingers raw yet steady. Daenerys, too, burned a path wide as fate. Mounted astride her scarlet wyvern, now christened Emberfang by the cheering crowds, she carved a corridor through the mountain road to the Vale, melting avalanches before they crushed goat herders, searing rock slides to grit before they buried wheat stores. At dusk she landed in a valley of evergreens frozen mid-sway, stood barefoot in snow, and breathed flame into a single towering pine until its sap boiled and burst into a column of orange light. Villagers gathered, teeth chattering, cheeks wet from sudden heat that made them weep. When she spoke, only stories outlast winter. The words echoed across slopes and etched themselves into bark. All these threads pulsed at the edge of Bran's thought, a woven mantle equal parts fire and frost. Yet in the quiet space between them, he sensed the fracture widening, a region of emptiness clawed open in the very land, devouring warmth before stories could reach. Vision blurred. His spirit flew outward past White Harbor's thin reed marshes, soaring above the Nightfort ruins and the icy gorge beyond Skirling Pass. There, on a plateau older than memory, stood a citadel of jagged ice blacker than void, spires twisting into a sky alive with silent lightning. At its base a fissure yawned, and from that chasm bloomed a shadow like a dark flower, petals of vapor curling upward, devouring the stagnant air and birthing nothing in its place. He'd never felt cold like this. It was not the bite of winter, but the absence of movement, the kill side of possibility. The stillness inside him surged, yearning to join its twin. Bran clenched his fist around the binding chain, silver and root and steel biting his skin. He drove a single memory into the gap. The smell of Mother's hair when she hugged him after his first fall, the trembling relief in her arms. The ice citadel shuddered, but the tear remained. He returned to his body with a jolt. Sweat iced across his brow, though the godswood stood mild beneath lanterns. The ravens on the branches above him croaked, restless. One fluttered, then burst upward, beating through snow-laden air toward the northern dark. Bran spoke aloud, though no one was near. "I need the circle." The roots burrowed deeper, sending the message along hidden veins. Beyond walls and snowfields, sparks stirred in dreamers' minds. Jon paused mid-stride, Sansa's tongue faltered mid-speech. Daenerys looked up mid-flight. Arya stiffened in her saddle, Sam's quill halted on parchment, Mira's oar dipped still. Each felt the tug, and New Winterfell called them home, with no time to squander. 3 nights later the castle blazed, like a great hearth against a moonless void. Wagons jammed the yards. Braziers rimmed every tower. Banners stitched with new silver runes flapped stiff as hammered iron. In the great hall, the circle gathered at a round maple table, pushed beneath the weirwood throne. Its polished surface, inlaid with a map of the realm, etched in glass. Small iron figurines marking each anchor stone. Ghost prowled the perimeter, tail low, nose twitching. Bran rolled to the table's edge, roots retreating from his wheels. so he might sit among them rather than above. His presence chilled the air. Nearby candles guttered but did not die. He waited until their breaths fell in uneasy unison before speaking. The stillness found a wound we have not stitched. North of the wall, beyond the frost fangs, lies an old giant valley called Skagar's Hollow. There once stood a children's city carved into ice, Kelnayan. It died in the first long night. Now the hollow leaks purpose again. A rift. Tandihain. It grows. Misterm. Sam unfurled a map inked that morning, his handwriting jagged from fatigue. Reports from free folk speak of travelers lost mid-step. Walkers vanish behind a curve of ridge, no scream, no tracks. Ravens sent dive into mist, never rise, even whites crumble if pushed near. His finger tapped the spot. A silence that eats. Arya frowned. If it devours even the dead, what does it want? The same as before, Bran answered. A vessel. Sansa's throat tightened. You hold it already. I hold a portion, Bran admitted. The rift is greedier. It seeks to carve me hollow or find another heart strong enough to shatter this chain. Jon placed gloved hands on the table, knuckles pale. Then we close it. Same as before. Anchor stones, memory, song. It will resist louder, Bran said. We must weave all threads at once. I cannot travel. My leaving would break Winterfell's shield. But one of you must plant the core anchor at the rift's edge. A heartwood seed shaped from living chain, forged tonight. Bedimantend. Mira leaned forward. I'll carry it. My feet no bog and snow. Daenerys shook her head. Your courage is equal, but my fire can seal the wound long enough to plant. Send me. Tyrion swung a boot off the bench. You forget altitude. Wyvern or not. Skies above Frostfangs churn with storms colder than hate. Wing beats will freeze solid. Then we go by land, Gendry said, hefting a new warhammer burnished with silver veins. Ice cracks beneath weight of true steel. Jon looked to Bran. Who? Many. Bran's starshot eyes pinned each. Mira leads. Jon and Ali's guide, for they know the passes. Arya and Gendry guard the flank. Daenerys tempers the cold but travels on foot until open sky. Sam carries runes and must survive. Without the word the chain is mute. Tyrion raised a mock finger. And I? Stay, Bran said. Convince the realm its fate hangs on 7 souls. They will lend song. Without new voices our work there fails. The dwarf sighed. I shall spin the deadliest tale. Preparations consumed the night. In the old crypt forge Gendry and the Winterfell smiths stoked fires until sparks whirled like swarm fireflies. Sam sprinkled powdered glass and ash into molten silver, reciting runic phrases that made the metal shimmer pale lavender. They poured it into a seed-shaped mold carved of weirwood, branched veins radiating from a hollow center that would, at finish, house a drop of Bran's own blood. Before dawn, the mold cracked open with an audible snap. Gendry lifted a seed 6 inches long, ribs of fragile filigree encasing nothing yet. Sam pressed a finger to Bran's palm, drew a single bead of frost-veined crimson. The droplet slid into the seed's core, glowed once, then dimmed. The hollow filled with living stillness bound by story. The moment it settled, a hoarse cry rose from the north. Every hound in Winterfell howled in answer. Bran's chair jolted, roots clutching stone. The rift had noticed. They departed, under shrunken dawn, 7 riders plus 12. Free folk scouts on snow runners. Ghost led until snow deepened into powder where even a direwolf floundered. Then Jon harnessed the great beast to a sleigh carrying Sam and the rune crates. They traveled single file through pine tunnels, breath crystallizing into strings that hung like spun sugar behind them. Overhead, the sky shivered pearl gray, caught between blizzard and hush. By the second night, they reached the ruined garrison of Icemark, long abandoned by the Night's Watch after wildlings burned its towers. There they slept in canvas shelters, too tired for fire. Daenerys walked perimeter, heat leaking from her skin in ripples that turned snow to vapor. She paused beside Jon, who stood staring north. I never thought to ride with you again, she said. Jon's shoulders eased. Nor I. He eyed Emberfang tethered in the clearing, the wyvern's breath pluming sparks against the dark. When we reach the hollow, if my life ends, promise me. She shook her head. We will plant story, not graves. He almost smiled. I wish I still believed wishes mattered. He turned away. She touched his arm. They do, she said. Or I would have flown into a storm and chased death to bury my shame long ago. She squeezed, then released. Rest. Tea. Night wore on. Snow fell without whisper. Within the command tent, Sam traced runes onto the seed's surface in squid ink, mixed with powdered pearl. Each curve he drew stole heat from the air until ice traced his lashes. Yet at completion the seed warmed. Thawing his fingers, the runes glowing faint rose. He exhaled. Mira checked her spear, its tip now silver leaf. Arya slept cross-legged against a crate, dreamless. Gendry dozed by the forge embers, one boot scorched smooth from proximity. Alis Karstark perched near the entrance, eyes wide, clutching a thin sword Sam had found in Icemark's armory. No one told her she must come, but she refused to remain behind. Jon allowed it, sensing she sought redemption. At dawn they crossed the frozen shivering river, axes chopping footholds in glassy ice thick as castle walls. Here, the cold took on shape. Dyes of mist that swirled around ankles, tugged at cloaks, whispered. Sam heard fragments of words. Hush, hush. He tightened scarf, continued. Beyond lay the Frostfang foothills. Jagged teeth of rock erupted through snow, cliff faces glazed slick. They climbed a switchback pass where wind carved hollows that roared like distant crowds. In one such hollow Mira spotted a statue, a child of the forest, arms upraised, eyes gouged away. She muttered a prayer and pressed a reed token between its feet. No one spoke. That night the aurora returned, but sickly. Strips of marrow-white light pulsed, then tore, leaving gaps blacker than night behind them. Daenerys stood beneath, fire flicking from her palm. The light recoiled, holes knitted shut. A compromise, not a victory. On the fifth day they saw the hollow. It resembled a giant crater, miles across, its rim scalloped like a pie crust of ice and blasted stone. Within, color drained. Snow shone slate gray, rock the shade of an old bruise, sky above tinted ash. At the center, the citadel spire, pitch black, ridged with serrated flanges, rising to a peak lost in haze. Around its base, a moat of nothing, pure absence, a void that ate falling snow before crystals touched an unseen plane. The air here was silent, not quiet. Soundless, as though eardrums had been removed. Horses balked. Scouts wept. Ghosts snarled, hackles electric. Jon calmed him with a touch, but felt tremor through fur. Arya steadied Alice, whose sword quivered in her grasp. Mira surveyed the slope. We go down. Anchor must root at rim before moat. Gendry hefted hammer. I'll clear path. He smashed a boulder. Shards skidded mutely downslope, then vanished into gray dust. No clatter, no echo. Everyone noticed. Sam tied rune flags to poles. Free folk drove them into snow every 20 yards, breadcrumbs of story to illuminate the way. Each sigil glowed a faint pearl. They descended. With each step sound dimmed. Boots crunched softer, until footfalls seemed only imagined. Voices thinned to lip movements. The pulse inside ears slowed. Breath no longer fog. Near the rim, Daenerys halted, raised both palms. Fire erupted, but produced neither hiss nor roar. Flame blossomed brilliant, yet silent. A flower in vacuum. The cold bent around it like glass under heat, yet the rift did not retreat. It widened, greedily swallowing the fire's edge. Daenerys staggered. Bronze blood within the seed tugging at hers. Mira signaled, now. She unstrapped the seed from its silk cradle. It gleamed a delicate violet, runes pulsing. She knelt, but the snow there erased itself, powder sublimating. There was nothing to plant in. Sam knelt with her, produced a chisel of dragon glass. He drove it into the ice to carve socket, but ice splintered into smoke each stroke. Arya motioned, deeper. Mira pressed her palm to ground, blood trickling from reopened wound. The snow accepted blood, turned pink, then remained solid. She sliced again, letting blood pool while Sam chiseled. This time, digging a narrow well that did not vanish. They nestled the seed inside. Gendry hammered runed stakes around it, welding loops with pocket bellows heated by Daenerys' breath. Arya poured salt and iron shavings, tracing a spiral. Alice recited the names of every Karstark she had betrayed by serving the White Dream. Tears froze on her cheeks, then thawed, then froze again. Ghost stood watch at her back, silent, teeth bared. The citadel spires screamed, a noise beyond hearing. A pressure wave that shuddered ribs. Snow shot outward in rings. A fissure crack opened across the rim, splitting toward Mira's feet. Jon lunged, grabbed her cloak, yanked her free as crust fell away. The seed slid into the gap. Sam shouted soundlessly, but roots erupted from seed's ribs, silver-black tendrils gripping ice, halting descent. The rift boiled. From the moat rose silhouettes, not whites, but voids shaped like men, perfect absences. Moonlight bent around them. They advanced, each step erasing boot prints behind. Arya threw knives, but blades vanished into their chests, absorbed. Gendry swung hammer. Shockwaves rippled, but misses left arcs of missing air. Jon raised Longclaw. He mouthed to Daenerys. Fire. She exhaled twin jets. Flame outlined the void shapes in flickering light, revealing faint edges like shattered glass. Jon struck those edges. Steel rang against no substance, yet sparks flew. One void buckled, collapsing into ash motes. Another lunged at Sam. Ghost intercepted, jaws closing on emptiness, but his teeth flashed blue-white, and he yelped, shaken. More voids surfaced, dozens. Alice screamed, slashing futilely. Mira dragged Sam backward, covering with spear. Bran's seed pulsed. Thrum, thrum, each beat louder. Far away in Winterfell, Bran gasped. He felt the citadel tug at his chest like a hook. The stillness inside him wanted free. He poured memory, but memory slipped. He needed louder song. But Tyrion's tales in the south were only beginning. He reached deeper. He found old Nan's voice, found Rickon's squeal of joy when they played hide and seek, found Robb's speech to his bannermen, Mother's lullaby. He hurled them north. In the hollow, a low hum formed, faint but unmistakable. The melody of a Winterfell hearth song. The voids paused as though confused. The seed brightened, rose half an inch from socket, then burst roots that lanced into surrounding ice like lightning, carving runes in molten trails. The fissure glowed. Jon saw opening. All voices, he shouted, though words scarcely carried. But the intent spread. Mira chanted the neck lullaby. Sam bellowed the Night's Watch oath. Aes cried the Karstark words in High Northern. Gendry stomped rhythm, forging beat. Arya whispered the names of her pack. Daenerys sang a Valyrian march learned in childhood from her brother, voice resonant as bronze. The air vibrated. Sound returned, first as muffled echo, then full. With it came bite of cold, sharper than ever, but the voids recoiled, edges stuttering. One collapsed into a puddle of black frost. The citadel spire dimmed. Bran poured greater memory. Ned Stark cleaning ice in the Godswood. Maester Luwin telling Bran the sky's stories. Hodor carrying Bran across a stream aglow with fireflies. Word after word punched through the tether. The seed cracked. From its shell sprouted a sapling, the color of ash and argent. Leaves crystalline. It grew a dozen feet in seconds, a miniature weirwood etched with silver channels. Its roots filled fissures, cracks fused with living membrane. From its trunk chains unfurled, links forming mid-air, weaving a net across moat's edge, sealing absence with lattice of light and shadow. The voids convulsed, untethered, spiraled upward into smoke that dissipated among crackling stars. Silence fell, but natural at last. Wind keening across ice, heartbeats hammering in chests, hoarse breaths. The citadel spire flickered, then imploded, panels curling inward like burning parchment, until nothing remained but a pillar of frost dust that collapsed onto itself, leaving crater rim unmarred. The sapling's glow softened. At its base, the anchor runes steadied, embers settling into enduring pulse. Snow drifted, landing on leaves which did not melt but glittered. Jon sheathed Longclaw. Exhaustion racked him. He looked to Daenerys. She nodded, flames dwindling in her eyes. Arya retrieved discarded knives, whispering thanks. Sen knelt, pressing his forehead to new roots. Mira stood last, spear butt thumping once. Alice dropped to her knees, tears streaking cheeks, relief or grief unknown. Ghost padded forward, sniffed the sapling, then licked a root. He wagged his massive tail once, satisfied. When they raised their eyes, dawn stained the horizon rose gold. The first true dawn unmarred by veil of aurora in weeks. Bran felt the dawn as warmth channeled through miles of route. He slumped in his chair, snow eddying around his boots. The chain cooled, runes dimming to steady ember. His siblings would return alive. The stillness within quieted, not defeated, but lulled, dreaming now, behind thicker bars. It would test bonds again, winter was its nature, but each clash forged a stronger song. Bran exhaled, breath fogging ordinary white, no longer falling to ground like stone. He sensed the godswood relaxing as trees do, branches settling, leaves ceasing their tremor. The ravens finally preened instead of fretting. In the bailey outside, Tyrion's tale had reached crescendo. A bawdy punchline about a lion who wed a wolf and birthed a litter of cubs that ruled the forest with equal claws and cunning. The crowd howled laughter. Somewhere nearby, a minstrel struck a harp chord, launching another tune into brightening air. Bran smiled. Dawn's chorus. Yet even as he soaked that chorus, he glimpsed the far future. The circle scattering runes along the Jade Sea, singing songs in the Five Forts, mapping anchor stones upon the ruins of Valyria, forging pacts with kraken-hurled sailors and silk-capped priests. The work would never finish. That was the gift and burden. Story and stillness, forever in turning dance. He whispered to the heart tree, voice soft as moss. Hold, a while. The tree's carved face watched, bleeding crimson sap that glimmered in rising sun like tears of wine. Neither sorrow nor joy, merely enduring. Snow began to glitter rather than dim. Winter was not beaten, yet winter hummed a new refrain, and life answered. At the rim of Skagar's hollow, Jon watched sunlight fan across the sapling's crystal leaves, each flare scattering tiny rainbows over his cloak. He thought of his father's words, when the snows fall and the white winds blow, the lone wolf dies but the pack survives. He turned to his friends, his pack, faces hollowed by hardship yet shining. The wind gusted, flapped a banner of reed and wolf and dragon above them, sewn somewhere en route by Mira's deft fingers. Jon smiled then, small but real, and started down the trail toward home. Pack behind him, new story ahead. And behind them, the sapling thrummed, roots drinking dawnlight, singing memory into the deepest dark, line by line, forever. Mist clung to the slopes of the frost fangs like tattered shrouds, and the air smelled faintly of brimstone, where Daenerys' flames had scorched channels through the snowpack. Now the fires were embers, and the world lay hushed beneath an iron dawn. But the seven companions felt no triumph, only the bone-tired ache of travelers who have seen the edge of the world and know the world will not stop fraying just because they stitched one ragged seam. They broke camp at the rim of Skagar's hollow, every breath a puff of steam, every muscle complaining. Sam's quill-scarred fingers shook as he packed the rune flags back into their satchel. Gendry's shoulders throbbed where phantom echoes of hammer blows still reverberated through sinew. Arya's eyes burned from hours of staring into the soundless void until her own reflection had looked back like a stranger in glass. Jon Snow stood a little apart, one hand buried in Ghost's ruff, the other resting on his sword belt. Sunlight, thin, pale, uncertain, washed the citadel's ruins far below, no longer black or menacing, merely a field of broken mirrors scattered across gray ice. Between those shards grew the sapling they had birthed, silver-barked, crystal-leaved, shimmering each time wind brushed its crown. Already its roots had spread in filigreed veins across the crater floor, sealing cracks that yesterday swallowed light whole. But when John listened, with the hush that Bran had taught him, he could still sense a heartbeat pulsing far underfoot. Slow, heavy, resentful. Mira Reed joined him, snow squeaking beneath her boots. She carried the spear Jojen once carved, the silver leaf flicking at the edges now that fire and void had tempered it. For a time they stared in silence. Then Mira said, "Roots took faster than I feared." "They'll hold?" John asked. For now. She brushed wet strands from her forehead where frost had formed like a crown. "But roots only drink. They can't sing. Someone will have to come back. Feed the sapling stories, carve runes deeper." John's breath plumed. "We'll leave wardens." Mira offered a ghost of a smile. "Wardens of silence." "Has a ring." She turned to check on Sam, who was fussing over parchment tubes strapped to a sledge Ghost would tow. Arya approached next, snowflakes tangled in her dark hair. She had not slept. The shadows under her eyes were smudges of charcoal. "The ridge path we used is iced again," she said. "Steps'll vanish on our return. I can cut a new ledge, but we'd better leave before midday." John nodded. "Elise and the scouts?" "Hitching the horses." One of the mounts took a chill. "Gendry's forging shoes with heater cores. Thought of that himself." A spark of pride warmed her exhausted voice. Then it cooled. "John, when we closed the void, I felt something push back. Like a hand inside my head testing. It knew my faces. All of them." John's pulse tightened. "Did it mark you?" "Not me. It just watched. Then it was gone." She rubbed her jaw. "Tell Bran he isn't the only one being watched." John clasped her forearm. "I will." Gendry emerged from the horse's picket line, wiping soot on a torn rag. "Shoes are hot. We'll fit them and move." Across the encampment Daenerys faced the rising sun. Eyes shut, palms open. She looked at peace, yet steam curled off her bare skin where cloak parted. Her flesh struggled to keep pace with the cold settling into bones. Emberfang crouched behind her, wings hugging its scarlet body, joints stiff. The wyvern had taken a glacial shard through the membrane. John had stitched it with rawhide by torchlight, but flying would wait until the creature mended. Sam hobbled to John, scroll case banging his knee. "I copied the glyphs that flashed when the seed sprouted. They're fluid, changing each time I blink. But if we compare them to the spell script on Bran's chain, we may learn how many anchors the stillness needs for true balance." He gulped frosty air. "And how many songs. We'll see them safe to Winterfell," John promised. He raised his voice. "Mount up." The procession wound west, back through the maze of wind-carved ravines. Where void shapes had advanced, a glassy frost now lay, a skin of black ice so polished it cast warped reflections. The horses balked until Arya led them single file, blades chiseling footholds. Each step sent faint tremors through the crust. Sometimes the ice sighed as though exhaling trapped memories. By midday clouds rolled in, flat gray hulks smeared across the sky. The temperature plunged. John feared a whiteout, but the clouds held their snow. They only smothered the sun, stealing color until every cloak looked the same shade. In that twilight, Ghost became their beacon, his white fur a living torch. After hours, they crested the switchback, where first they had glimpsed the hollow. John paused to look back. The crater seemed smaller from here, the sapling a pinprick of silver. Yet the memory of what lurked beneath remained vast. He nudged his horse on. Not once did he glance again. 2 days later, beyond the Frostfang's lee, they reached the ruined hamlet of Frostwell. A scatter of stone huts, roofless from storms. A cracked watchtower leaning like a drunk above a frozen pond. Free folk had used it once as a trading halt, but now it lay silent. They took shelter in the tower's shadow, stacking broken beams for a smokeless fire. Sam spread a blanket and unrolled his parchments. Arya stood guard at the door arch, eyes on the violet dusk. Gendry hammered split planks into shields for the scouts. Mira and Nelai scouted wells for fresh water, chipping ice to fill skins. Inside, Jon heated broth over Daenerys' palm. She did not complain, though each hiss of steam cost her another measure of warmth. When the pot boiled, she sighed, exhaustion etched deeper than any scar. Jon ladled broth into a tin. "Drink, bite." She obeyed, hands trembling. The further we go from that hollow, the heavier the cold feels. Strange. Jon frowned. Heavier. Like carrying a chain of ice inside my ribs. She managed a wry smile. "You know something of such burdens." Jon stirred embers. "Mine's forged of vows. Yours of fire." Maisie numbs. Fire dims. She looked at her palm where calluses once glowed embers underneath. Now they dimly gleamed like banked coals. "I fear if the stillness ever claims me, Bran's chain won't hold." Jon met her gaze. "Bran will weave a new chain from memory of what you give today." She studied his face, then looked away. "You speak as though you trust him wholly." "He carries the weight so we might walk." Jon's voice softened. "If we doubt him, we hand the stillness our throats." Daenerys finished the broth, wiped her mouth. "Then there can be no doubt." She rose, straightened shoulders, and left to tend Emberfang. Jon watched her go, worry churning like black frost in his gut. Storms harried them southward. One morning they woke buried under 2 feet of new snow, horses bleating in panic until dug free. Another afternoon they chased a mirage of dancing lights that turned out to be nothing but sun glare on rime crystals. By the time they realized, they had marched an hour off course. Each hardship knit them tighter, yet fatigue gnawed. Ghost fell lame after slashing a paw on hidden shale. Jon bandaged the wound and walked beside the direwolf for miles, refusing saddle. Gendry lost a mitten and fashioned a new one from scrap leather, fingers blistering raw. Elise coughed blood from lungs chafed by dry air, yet she pressed on, muttering Karstark prayers no one else knew. On the 8th dawn, white banners of Winterfell's outer watchtowers rose from the horizon, their runes gleaming pewter beneath overcast skies. Torch lanes burned along ramparts. The travelers quickened pace, hearts hammering. When they rode through the shattered gate, an echo of the long telling still lingered. Mummers practicing a farce upon a makeshift stage. Children chasing cloth dragons that spat sparks. Vendors stewing turnip broth laced with mint to cut through smoke. Yet the crowds parted in hushed awe as the 7 rode by. Battlefield ghosts returned. Tyrion met them in the courtyard, cheeks ruddy from hearth drink. "Thank every forgiving god," he exclaimed. But his smile shrank as he saw their hollow eyes. "News first? Food first? Sleep first?" "Bran," Jon said. So Tyrion guided them through murmuring corridors to the godswood. Their Bran waited beneath the heart tree, frost threaded through his hair like early gray. Sansa stood beside him, wrapped in sable furs, her face set in regal calm that cracked only when she saw Arya and Jon alive. Bran's star-shot gaze flicked over each traveler, noting wounds no healer could touch. At last he said, "The sapling grows. The rift sleeps." Jon knelt, pressing fist to chest. "For now." Bran inclined his head once. "For now." He looked to Sam. "Glyphs." Sam, shaking with weariness, offered the scroll too. Bran laid one palm over it. Runes on the outer parchment flared, projecting a ghost script into air. Shifting characters orbiting a blank center. Bran traced a spiral in that void. Symbols aligned, clicked into new constellations. Everyone felt the air warm. "It tells of 9 wounds across the world," Bran murmured. "Each sealed by a shard of memory. Each born when the children splintered magic to make their first defense. We have healed 2, Winterfell and Skagar's hollow. 7 remain," Sansa whispered. Bran nodded. 2 in the Isles of Summer. 1 beneath old Valyria. 1 buried under the Dothraki Sea. 1 in the Shadowlands. 1 beneath Ashai's black water. and one within the Kingswood south of King's Landing. Tyrion paled. South? But the Stepstones swarm with pirates, and King's Landing barely rebuilds. Bran's voice softened. Stillness knows no border. Gendry exhaled. That valley in the Shadowlands, only stories speak of it. Sand that drinks light. Mira gripped her spear. And Valyria? No ship survives those smokes. Arya's shoulders squared. We will. Daenerys stepped into the glow of runes, face taut. The world once survives 7 cracks. We start at King's Landing, closest wounded. She felt eyes on her. If the stillness awakens beneath the Red Keep, it will feed on ghosts we left there. Silence crowded them. The heart tree's red leaves quivered. Bran closed his fingers, dimming the glyphs. The circle must divide. I remain anchor here. Jon leads to the Kingswood. Arya sails to the Isles with Gendry. Mira crosses the narrow sea. Takes Sam and Elise to Valyria under Maester sails. Sam choked. Valyria. Samwell Tarly is not an adventurer. Bran's lips almost curved. You already are. Tyrion opened palm in protest, then lowered it. And me. You will escort Jon to court. Bran's gaze sharpened. Tell the Iron Throne who truly holds Winter's leash, and why they must sing its song. Tyrion muttered. I do love lost causes. Sansa's voice, steady as ice, cut through. And I will keep the North strong. She looked at Bran. But we'll need trade, men grain. The South must honor its debts if we're to guard their skies. Bran nodded. You will have authority to levy memory as tax. Jon stood. Then we leave within the week. Supplies, ships, riders. He rested a hand on Daenerys' shoulder. We ride together this time. She covered his hand briefly. Until paths diverge again. A question flickered behind her eyes. Will we return? But she smothered it. Ghost pressed against Bran's chair, whining low. Bran stroked the direwolf's head. Go, he whispered. Guard the pack. Ghost looked to Jon, then back, then trotted to Arya's side. She smiled, tousling his fur. That evening the great hall brimmed with banners. The stark direwolf now entwined by a silver chain, a new sigil. Minstrels plucked lutes while fish stew simmered. All Winterfell gathered to welcome the 7, but joy rang brittle. People sensed larger storms. Even the children danced as though afraid the floor might crack. Gendry perched on a barrel near the hearth, hammer across his knees. Arya slipped beside him with 2 tankards of mead. He raised brows. You hate sweet drink. She shrugged. Tonight it's bitter enough. They clinked tankards, drank bought. He stared at the flames. West, east, south. We'll scatter. We'll return, Arya said, though her heart fluttered like a trapped moth. Starks have ways. You're half wildling, half shadow, half wolf. He smirked. 3 halves. No room for smiths. She punched his arm. There's always room for stories, and you forge those too. His eyes softened, but she drained her mug before it could turn into words she couldn't speak. Across the hall, Sam collapsed onto a bench near Mira, scroll spilling. She helped gather them, tying neat bundles. I've sailed bog canals but sea storms, he fretted. Mira grinned, adjusting her reed cloak for the 100th time. You'll be sick twice, pray thrice, then love it. Salt is good for ink. Damn it all. Sam made a face. Ink hates damp. Then keep your quills dry. I'll keep your head dry. She offered salted cod. He took a bite and nearly gagged. She laughed, and for a heartbeat, the hall felt lighter. At the dais Tyrion poured wine while Sansa surveyed the revel. They danced to forget, he observed. They danced to remember joy, she replied. Tomorrow they'll remember fear again. Tyrion's eyes gleamed. Tomorrow I spin such fear into gold. He set his goblet down. You will watch the realm's coffers grow. Grow or freeze, Sansa corrected. Depends how the South listens. He considered. When we meet Queen Myrcella's regent, I'll pretend to negotiate but plant seeds of guilt. Nothing shames a Baratheon faster than a child's grave. Sansa's gaze flicked, approving. Plant deep. Jon approached, tugging gloves. Sister. Tyrion. The horses are fed. We set out at first light. Sansa touched his cheek, voice low. Come back. He squeezed her hand, nodding. No other words fit. Night deepened. In the rookery, Bran sat alone. Wheels locked. Ravens asleep save one coal-eyed watcher. Moonlight filtered through rotted timbers. He felt the stillness quiver across the world, like a giant muscle testing fetters. Threads of memory shone, silver cords binding each of his friends. He fed those cords warmth, weaving a silent prayer neither old gods nor new could hear. Only the vast quiet itself. His eyes filmed white. He saw seas boiling around smoking peninsulas, saw red dunes under stranger constellations, saw jungle ziggurats swallowed by green gloom. In each vision opened a fracture, faint but hungry. The work ahead waited like an ocean at dawn, beautiful, merciless, endless. He did not flinch. He whispered, "Let the song begin again." The raven croaked, head cocked. Bran smiled at the bird, and the seed of Skagar's hollow pulsed miles away, echoing his heartbeat. The next morning the circle parted ways. Jon, Tyrion, Daenerys, Ghost, and 10 Stark outriders galloped south across the King's Road. Hooves kicking slush that froze midair. Arya and Gendry rode west to Deepwood Motte, where a Braavosi cog awaited tide. Mira, Sam, and Alice boarded a Pentoshi caravel at White Harbor, its hull reinforced with summer oak and prayer runes smuggled from Ashai. Sansa watched from Winterfell's battlements until the banners dwindled to colored flecks. She turned to Bran. "And us?" He gazed north where the wall glittered under sun. "We keep watch." Sansa drew her cloak. "Then let Winterfell become the world's hearth." Bran bowed his head. Below them, smiths rang anvils forging new chain links, scribes scratched tales onto fresh vellum, and children practiced songs older than speech. Their chorus rose like sparks. Bran listened, storing every note. Far away beneath foreign skies, each traveler felt the song flare in their chest. A compass of sound that would guide them through fog, flame, and void alike. They did not speak of it. They only rode, sailed, flew. Because to pause was to give the stillness room to whisper heavier doubts. And yet, in the coldest cavern of night, when stars looked like nails pinning black velvet to nothing, Bran Stark closed his eyes and knew a truth no chain could deny. The dance between silence and song was eternal, and all a human heart could do was keep time. One beat, one story. One fragile breath after another. He chose to trust in song. Incal. The winds off the shivering sea came in sharp gusts that rattled the rigging of the caravel Grey Gull and left crusts of rime along every iron ringbolt. Samwell Tarly stamped his boots on the deck, trying to keep feeling in his toes while his eyes swept the bruised horizon. The dawn sky there resembled parchment, bruised by spilled ink, darker clouds roiling beneath a brittle pink glow, as though the sun were scraping flint behind the world. Mira Reed stood on the prow, spear like a second spine, her reed-woven cloak snapping in bursts of spray. Beside her, Alice Karstark clutched the rail, knuckles bloodless, breath fogging into a trembling veil that disappeared as quickly as her courage returned. Beyond the vessel's bow, the sea heaved in broad glassy swells that reflected nothing. This close to the silent shore of Essos, even gulls found little welcome. Only the Grey Gull's name mocked the emptiness. Its avian cousins long vanished south with the last warmth of autumn. Sam's quill calluses split again when the ship lurched. He muttered a curse, rubbed salt into the cracks, and knelt by a coil of rope so his parchment tube wouldn't blow across slick planks. The runic map glowed through the leather like banked coals, that same pulse Bran had wrung from the glyphs of Skagar's hollow, coaxing them into directions. One more heartbeat, and Sam swore he could hear the map humming. He opened it with care. Symbols rippled, rearranging themselves whenever the keel shifted, as though the ink was listening to the water. Mira approached, shadow crossing his parchment. "Anything new?" she asked, voice pitched low so the sailors wouldn't notice how much depended on old skin and ink. "The songlines drift," Sam answered, eyes darting across sigils that now formed a spiral over western Esso's coast. "Every time the wind veers, one rune slides half a finger's breadth. I think the stillness stirs the air just to confuse us." Mira braced a foot on the rail and leaned closer. "Which one marks Valyria?" "The serpent with two heads." Sam tapped the glimmering Ouroboros. "But see how its tail now flicks north. Yesterday it pointed straight east." Elise heard them and joined. Her expression rhymed in dread. "If the map lies, we'll strike the smoking sea blind. No ship charted lives long enough to mark its shoals." "Yeah. The glyphs don't lie," Sam insisted more firmly than he felt. "They adjust to warn us before false currents swallow the keel. We follow their motion, not their memory." Mira straightened. "We follow our own memory, Samwell Tarley. Runes are guides, not captains." She turned, barked orders in a guttural Crannog low speech. Two deckhands shifted the mainsail a point off wind, and the gray gull creaked onto a new tack that felt, somehow, truer beneath Sam's boot soles. The runes stilled, aligning in a pattern that made his pulse slow. Across hundreds of leagues, Jon Snow rode south with Tyrion Lannister toward the King's Road split at the Trident, and Daenerys Targaryen flew half a sky above them, astride Emberfane's flickering crimson silhouette. Arya and Gendry sailed westward on the Nightbringer toward the Redwine Straits. Each bore an ember of Bran's chain within pocket or scabbard, and sometimes they felt it warming like a hidden coal whenever thoughts drifted north to Winterfell. Yet at dusk it colded again, as though insisting, "Ride faster, sail harder, sing louder." The King's Road slipped beneath hooves in a rhythm so steady Jon feared his thoughts might freeze if he relaxed. Ghost loped beside the escort column, limp gone from healed paw, muzzle crusted with melt ice. Tyrion rode a shaggy Garin near the front, wrapped in layered silks and wolf pelts, yet still he shivered and cursed every mile marker. One evening as campfires dotted a clearing north of the Blackwater Rush, Jon crouched beside Tyrion's tent, where the dwarf sat hunched over parchment, the glow of a single candle making his eyes gleam fox bright. "Letters to the Crownland's lords?" Jon asked. "Letters? Gods, no." Tyrion flexed fingers blotched purple from cold. "Fables, nightmares. I'm drafting the legend will spill in Queen Myrcella's courts. Mere missives would be weighed, taxed, and forgotten. Legends slip under doors and breed." Jon crouched nearer. "You'll frighten them with stillness, ghosts they can't see?" Tyrion angled his quill. "Better ghosts than tax ledgers. Gold cloaks understand fear more quickly than figures." A gust rattled canvas. The candle trembled, and for an instant Jon thought the flame blew whitened like the cold at Skagar's hollow. Tyrion steadied it, continued scribbling. "We paint Bran as both saint and sword. Show them what happens if they refuse to sing. Mention how an entire frost kingdom swallowed itself north of the wall ages ago. True enough. By the time we reach the capital, they'll beg for his chain to be woven through every bell tower." "Bematermio." Joan's gaze fell on the parchment sketch. A towering silver-barked tree rising from a city's heart. Chains spiraling its trunk into every street. People around it knelt, some praying, some smiling, all alive. "Their comfort at least," he murmured. "Your legend has them living." "Legends only work if they promise life," Tyrion said. "Death alone bores an audience." Jon left him to his ink. In his own tent, he fingered the link Bran had pressed into his palm. Even through leather gloves, the metal felt half snow, half sunset, cool yet faintly pulsing. He closed his fist, thinking of the Kingswood fissure Bran described. Every breath, south grew milder, but the link's chill deepened. Proof that warmth could hide worst winters inside stone and thorn. He imagined the red keep above fissured bedrock, stillness whispering through dragon crypts. "We'll come," he vowed to the cold metal. Ghost's nose nudged the tent flap in answer. Half a world to the west, Arya crouched on the tilting prow of the Nightbringer, wind whipping her braid and salt spray dotting her cheeks. She liked the ship's name, something that stepped from shadow without apology. Gendry worked the bellows at the midship forge Captain Milano had let him rig despite protests. It would spook the crew. Each hammer strike on dagger blanks sent sparks swirling like orange snowflakes against the indigo dusk. Sailors muttered of ghosts, yet the warmth drew them as nights cooled. During the third week of voyage, as the broken arm of Dorne faded behind storms, one sailor claimed he saw lights underwater, ribbons of green twisting like river eels. Arya leaned over rail and glimpsed brief emerald flares gliding just beneath the swells. Not phosphorescent algae. These lights curved too sharp, carved glyphs into their brightness. She fetched Bran's link from her pouch and dangled it by a leather thong over the sea. The metal glimmered, and below, the lights slowed, coiling upward until they hovered just beneath the surface. A spiral of glowing runes, vaguely similar to those at Skagar's hollow but water fluid, each sigil shifting shape as her heartbeat pounded. Gendry joined, brow sheened with sweat. "See ghosts?" he asked. "Songs," Arya breathed. She knelt, brushed fingertips against the water. Cold shot up her arm, but the runes brightened. "They know the anchor inside me. Then they guide or warn," Gendry said. Captain Milano barked for them to step back, but Arya ignored. She whispered each of the Stark names, first softly, then louder. With every name a rune cooled, sinking into deeper darkness. When Jon's name left her lips, the last rune vanished. The sea went blank. Only moon-ribboned swells remained. Arya curled her fist around the link, teeth aching from cold. Later, she found parchment in her bunk, sealed by sea salt crystals. No signature, only a scrap of verse. "When night brings the wolf across water, remember the drowned city listens." She tucked it inside her bodice and said nothing. In the gray gull's hold, Sam discovered the runic map now pulsed with a second heartbeat. The outer ring flickered crimson every few breaths, a counter-rhythm to Bran's silver thrum. He hurried above deck, parchment flapping, almost colliding with Mira. "The glyphs echo something south," he panted. "Either Arya's link or Jon's, perhaps both." Mira steadied him. "Echo is stronger when one song meets another." She stared across the freezing sea where smoke columns ahead blurred the horizon. Valyria's broken neck, perhaps, or volcanic plumes from a vent none charted. A low thrumming reached their deck, like drums muffled by miles of water. Sailors crossed themselves with talon charms. Elise emerged, eyes wide. "The sea grumbles. I feel it in my bones." "Volcanic rumble," Sam suggested. "Or a beast," Mira countered. They gazed outward as the swells thickened with floating pumice. Steam rose in serpentine streaks. Sulfur tinged each wind gust. Sam's stomach roiled, not seasickness this time, but dread. For the first time since departing White Harbor, the gray gull flew no gulls overhead, no albatross, only emptiness. At dusk the clouds burned gold against smoke pillars, and the water stilled into sheets of obsidian. Beneath that black mirror, faint blue fissures pulsed, veins glowing from some hellfire below. The helmmaster called all hands to shorten sail. The ship crept into the volcanic maze at half speed. Mira took Sam's elbow. "Ready your quill. This place writes its own song." "How can I write?" Sam whispered. "If ash steals the sky." "Write in ash then," she said, eyes flaring. "All runes crave a pen." She bounded toward the bow, already singing a neck dirge to steady crew hearts. Sam swallowed, unrolled parchment, and began copying a new ring of glyphs that sprouted along the map's edge, curves like dragon wings folded over broken towers. Ink blistered where the parchment touched rail salt, but he etched anyway. Every stroke a prayer Bran might read across half a world. In Winterfell, Bran sensed those strokes as faint ripples on still water. He sat in candlelit crypts beneath the first keep. Rudans protruding from stone walls, silver links fused to them like veins in marble. Sansa knelt nearby, sorting scrolls from White Harbor merchants begging for winter silk and runned coal shipments. Bran's eyes went white. He drifted through routes that wound across seas and deserts until he perched among the wind-swept cedars of Storm's End. There the King's Road wound south into the Kingswood, and beneath its soil he tasted the sour throb of a sleeping wound. It whispered stories of dragons roasting traitor lords, of bastards hung from weeping willows, of wildfire caches left to rot. The stillness licked each memory like a starving hound. He withdrew, gasping frost. Sansa hurried to his side, but he raised a hand. "Jon nears the trident," he murmured. Stillness coils ahead of him. The Kingswood crack is open wider than we feared. Sansa rose, cloak trailing dust. "I'll send ravens to Tarth, to Hayford. If loyal levies guard the wood's border, Jon can cut through without hindrance. The wound thirsts, sister. Levies will freeze before they lift spears." Bran met her eyes. "He will need music before swords." Sansa exhaled. "We'll send bards, 200 voices from Winterfell's chorus. Every mile a bonfire, every bonfire a ballad. I can risk that." She hesitated. "But what of your strength? Each time you open vision, your lips blue, your breath." "I am ice and root and boy," Bran said gently. "And I will not break." A pause. "Yet." Sansa pressed a kiss to his brow, warmth fleeting. "Keep the yet far from me," she whispered, and ascended the stair. Alone, Bran traced the air with frost-bitten fingers, shaping runes invisible to human eye. Each symbol drifted outward, caught by the raven's dreams, to be carried to sea and forest and capital. One rune landed inside Tyrion's inkwell as he drafted his legend. Another flickered in Daenerys' eyelids as she drifted in saddle sleep. A third slid beneath Arya's tongue as she practiced water dancer forms on a moon-whitened deck. They did not know, but Bran sowed these runes like grains in wind. South of the Wendwater, pine trees rose gnarled and thick, their trunks black with damp. Jon's escort moved single file along a deer path, torches guttering in green gloom. Ghost ranged ahead, hackles prickled. Tyrion rode behind Jon now, hood up, parchment secured by wax inside his jerkin. They had left the main road to avoid bandits itching for the crown's coin. Yet Jon sensed eyes. Stillness did not need men to carry bows. It needed shadows and hush. They reached a clearing where 7 old weirwood stumps ringed a stone platform half buried under moss. Jon dismounted. "Camp here." He touched the nearest stump. Worm-eaten wood crumbled, but inner core remained blood-red. He thought of Winterfell's heart tree, of Bran. Tyrion paced, muttering lines for tomorrow's audience at Duskendale. "First foothold in Crownland's diplomatic theater. Heroes glow like hearths," he recited, "but tyrants cast longer shadows." He sighed. "No, too blunt." As dusk fell, Ghost suddenly barked toward the deeper wood. Jon unsheathed Longclaw. The escorts formed spear semicircle. Light vanished among trees, snuffed as though jaws ate torches. From that blackness shuffled figures, children by stature, cloaked in dead leaves. They halted at the stump ring. Tyrion swallowed. "Are those children of the forest?" one escort whispered. Jon stepped forward, sword lowered. But as moonshaft pierced branches, he saw pallid skin, hollows where eyes should shine golden. A parody of the children. These small folk were wights built of splinters and fern, reanimated by chill no dragonglass dagger could end, because inside them pulsed not the Night King's magic, but a quieter hunger. Jon's chain link chilled to ice. Shadows behind the puppets rippled. From them seeped a vapor like fog, but darker, weaving between stumps like roots searching for soil. Ghost snarled and lunged. His jaws snapped a puppet's neck, leaf bones scattered. Yet no corpse remained, only crumbling bark. The vapor retreated, coiling around another puppet. Jon slashed. Blade cleft wood, but again bark fell like ashes, and the vapors laughed in voiceless shudders. Tyrion yanked a vial from belt. Sansa's idea. Powdered runestone from Skagar's sapling fused with honey. He hurled it. The glass shattered and silver motes burst across clearing. Where powder landed, vapor hissed and shrank. The puppets staggered, threads severed. Ghost tore another apart. Jon pressed the attack, swirling Longclaw in arcs that scattered motes further. Escorts thrust spears through lids of shadow. Wind picked up, carrying silver dust like snowfall. The vapors thinned, drawing back toward shadows, until only one remained at center, swirling above the mossy platform. Jon strode to meet it. He pressed Bran's link against the mist. The metal glowed, runes igniting. He spoke names: Robb, Sansa, Arya, Bran, Rickon, Ned, Catelyn. With each name, the vapor dimmed until the last shred curled into the stump's hollow, where it froze as a crust of hoarfrost that cracked and fell silent. Jon sheathed the longclaw. The escorts lowered spears. Ghost nosed the hoarfrost, sneezed. Tyrion wiped sweat. The stillness sends scouts, sized to lure pity, he muttered. And to test our songs, Jon replied. He tucked the link away. We'll send a raven. Bran must tune louder. They moved on at dawn, leaving the stump ring dusted in silver powder that glimmered under sun, already fading as insects reclaimed forest hum. Beyond the smoking sea, the gray gull threaded a labyrinth of steaming fissures. Stench of sulfur clothed everyone. Sailors tied soaked cloth across mouths. Meera navigated by rune pulses alone, shouting headings that clashed with compass needles spinning wild. Twice they drifted near scab islands that weren't land but solidified foam. Once a wave of butter-yellow acid slapped hull planks and sizzled into smoke before Sam's amazed eyes. On the seventh day, they sighted jagged silhouettes. Valeria's towers broken like fangs, each one belching threads of red vapor. Lightning spider webbed within those plumes even as sun shone high. But between two ruined spires lay calm inlet, and in its sheen rusted masts of ship carcasses protruded like grave markers. The gray gull anchored at distance. Rowing boats would brave the final furlong. Sam packed his parchments in oilskin, heart pounding. The glyph says the wound lies beneath the doom's heart, but the anchor must root in living soil, not stone. Meera hefted her spear. We'll find soil, or make it. She eyed the molten channels glowing in shattered streets. Ashai Shadowbinders claim seeds sprout in glass here. If so, blood will feed them too. Menso. Alis donned boiled leather breastplate over maester-stitched padding. Blood I have, she said wry. They rode as dusk-painted Valyria amber, each oar dipped rippling reflections of collapsing citadels overhead. No birds shrieked. No beast stirred. Only wind through glass sills, singing a high keening note that matched the rune pulse in Sam's tube. They landed on a quayside crusted with salt shards. At the approach to a grand boulevard paved in cracked black obsidian, they stopped, transfixed by a statue half sunk in slag. A woman with dragon wings and serpent tail, arms raised, yet the head gone. Within the hollow neck flickered a blue-white glow. Meera stepped forward, saw glyphs etched on the hollow interior walls, glowing faintly. Her anchor link heated. Heart of the wound is near. Sam knelt, brushed dust. Glyphs changed shape, forming circles as if reading his presence. He copied them furiously. Sweat rolled despite sulfur chill. Behind him, Alis kept watch, sword drawn. From nearby alleyways slithered shapes. Shadows like men, but magma outlined their veins. Skin cracked obsidian, eyes starry void. They hissed, but their mouths broke soundless. Whites of glass and fire, birthed from the doom's hearth. Meera thrust spear, obsidian cracked, molten blood sprayed. The thing reassembled with a shriek. Its chest opened, showing a cavity of emptiness where hearts belonged. Sam fumbled for his bag. Silver runestone powder. He hurled a handful. The powder sparked blue, latched onto molten cracks, cooling them into dull stone. The creature froze mid-claw swipe. Meera shattered it with spear butt. Yet more emerged, dozens, crawling ceiling beams like dark cats. The boulevard lit red. Ace shouted over roar of chimneys. Plant seed now. She slashed, ducked, parried magma claws that tore her pauldron. Meera dragged Sam toward the statue's pedestal. Beneath lay a crevice dripping luminous azure liquid, the stillness manifesting in fire's land. Sam slashed his palm. Mixed blood with powdered runes, daubed onto anchor stone had forged from copper ore found in the gull's ballast. The stone pulsed. He plunged it into the crevice. Blue light surged up statue's veins, turning wings into windows of crystal. The glass whites recoiled, shapes cracking, shrieking, folding. A quake rumbled, towers shivered, molten rivers rerouted, circling the quay as though barred by unseen dams. Statue's chest reformed with crystal ribs. Between them grew a branch no bigger than nettle stalk. Silver bark, transparent leaves. Sam watched in awe. But the wound fought. From every fissure a roar came, steel being torn by giants, followed by black steam. A wall of it barreled down the boulevard. Mira shoved Sam behind fallen column. Alice braced shield. The steam clashed against New Branch's light, splitting, twisting upward to sky. The roar subsided. Whites crumbled, molten hearts extinguished. Silence took Valyria. True, echoing silence. Sam's legs quit. He dropped to knees, sobs sobbing relief and sulfur. Mira cuffed his cheek lightly. "Ink, quill," she urged. "Mark the branch's shape before it fades." He obeyed, hands trembling. Alice slumped, bleeding from claw scratches that smoked. Mira snapped dragonglass shard from spear butt and scraped away boiling flesh until wound bled clean. She bound it with linen soaked in gracia kelp. They'd learned kelp calmed magma taint. Overhead, clouds parted. Stars appeared. This close to Valyria they had looked purple night after night. But now they shone winter white. Sam thought of Bran staring at the same stars, and felt strangely less alone on a continent of ghosts. At Dragonstone's ruined aerial spire, Daenerys dismounted Emberfang. The wyvern wheezed, but its wingmen held. She gazed to horizon where King's Landing's lights flickered. Memories of bells and fires skewered her stomach. She touched the link at her throat. Cold. A reminder that even here stillness seeped. She addressed the garrison of Stormlanders Jon had dispatched ahead. "Within 2 days, Jon Snow arrives. Until then, feed the fires." She pointed to beacon braziers rebuilt at mountaintop. "Let flames bright as noon burn each night. The stillness will recoil from our chorus of light." A grizzled captain saluted. "We'll keep them stoked, Your Grace." "Not a queen," she murmured. But the wind took the words. She strode to the courtyard, staring at scorched stones where once Drogon's heels had scraped. She knelt, laid palm on black basalt. Heat pulsed upward, perhaps memory rather than temperature. She closed eyes, sang a lullaby her mother had sung on storm nights, a melody of Valyrian vowels bending in sorrow. Flames in braziers leapt, and somewhere above the sea, a lone gull cried. First bird call she'd heard in weeks. Nightfall deepened Eastwatch's cobalt sky. In Winterfell's rookery, Bran's breathing slowed. He felt anchors settling. One in charred streets of Valyria, one in stump ring of Kingswood, one moving like a star across the summer sea following Arya's ship. Threads tightened, net weaving. Yet in the north an echo rumbled still, from deeper than Skagar's hollow, older than any fissure. He opened inner eye and saw a cavern under Icecap, where first night King had slept. There now pooled a void so stark, it bled color from memory itself. At its center, a figure coalesced, shape of a man, but built from nothingness, limbs defined by absence of light. It lifted a hand, and in that gesture, whole decades wilted, histories fading to dust. Bran felt records at the Citadel brown, as if centuries old. The stillness was birthing an avatar, learning to walk unchained by vessel of flesh. Bran gasped. Roots spasmed, links clanged. He reached for every anchor. Sapling at Skagar's hollow blazed silver. Valyrian branch glimmered, Kingswood stump ring hummed. Energy coursed into him, but the avatar smirked. Bran felt it though no face existed, then sank back into black pool, whispering, "Not enough." Sweat froze on Bran's chin. He whispered into silence, "We're not finished." His voice cracked, yet carried down root lines to scattered companions. They each felt a tremor, a dream of a pale boy, whispering courage. They rose from bedroll or bunk, drew cloaks, sharpened blades. The Avatar slept but dreamed of waking. The circle of memory moved on. Arya's ship cut waves toward the Isles where 2 more wounds awaited. Jon closed on the Red Keep's shadow. Sam copied runes that shifted even as ink dried. Mira steered sailors out of Valyria's charnel labyrinth. Daenerys lit beacon fires atop Dragonstone so bright the horizon seemed a false dawn. And in Winterfell, Bran Stark, ice and root and boy, watched and wove, a weaver who could not rest, because the loom roared each time he blinked, and the world's tapestry frayed faster than mortal hands could mend. Yet mend they must. So he whispered again, louder this time, though only ravens understood. Keep singing. Kake, kai. Raw twilight pooled over the Kingswood like old wine decanted onto moss, dense and glimmer dark, catching the copper glint of Jon Snow's torchlight, as he led 4 riders through the briar-choked track. No trumpet announced their arrival. Tyrion insisted silence was half their armor, but the road itself seemed to breathe them in, hushes of wind dying whenever hoof met leaf. Only Ghost padded unbothered, his pale coat the one white in a world gone bruise-violet. Far behind, Yon's main column waited with tense and wary eyes, fires banked to embers lest the stillness notice men by scent of smoke. They sought the fissure Bran had warned, a wound beneath king-claimed soil, but wounds rarely present clean. The Kingswood offered labyrinths, wolf dens abandoned for lack of prey, boar wallows turned ice pits where no dew should freeze. Even the very scent of spring budding beyond the Wendwater felt counterfeit. Ghost growled at bramble shade, then pressed on. Tyrion rode beside Jon, his pony Shalky, as nimble as any deer. He toyed with a scrap of parchment bearing Bran's latest raven script. Keep singing, woven under runes that blurred when stared at too long. We are becoming a choir without a conductor, he muttered, eyes scanning tree line for more puppets of bark and shadow. My voice is more suited to tavern songs than saving realms. You spin, legend, Jon answered, voice carefully low. Legend is song enough. Legend does not slash throats of whites. Tyrion's reply trembled with the cold weight of memory, nor stillness made bone. He tucked the parchment into jerkin. I prayed Daenerys finds her notes. They dismounted at the clearing, where Jones' powder had sealed bark creatures 2 nights prior. Today the stumps bore a film of sparkling frost, no sunbeam touched, even now, at the lips of morning. Jon crouched, pressed gloved knuckles to soil. Inside his chest, the anchor link thrummed, colder than Dorne's moonless salt flats. It deepens, he said. Ghost. The direwolf circled. Hackles up, nose to ground, tail stiff as spear. He halted, pawing at earth where moss parted to reveal a hairline crack, mere child's etch in dirt. Yet from it drifted a filament of white vapor thinner than gossamer. Jon touched the crack with 2 fingers. His breath fled iron fast, and lungs burned. He pulled away before frostbite claimed skin, shook hand until heat returned. Tyrion's lantern cast halo over the crack, but the vapor swallowed light. It hung there, hungry. He produced a tiny silver bell. Sansa Smith's had rune etched along the rim. Its clapper, a chip of dragon glass, chimed once, clear as winter glass falling from eaves. The vapor recoiled, curling back underground like a startled eel. The crack sealed to a hairline again, but did not disappear. Jon rose. We hold it with bells and song. Until Bran comes with root. Until, Tyrion echoed. They marked the stump ring with powdered runestone again, etched in a spiral ever tightening toward that hairline. Jon fixed torches along perimeter, logs soaked in resin and ghostgrass ash as Sam's letters described. When lit, the flame burned frost blue. Tyrion scribbled lines in notebook. Here stands the hush that ate the heart of the forest. Here rings the vow that feeds its hunger song. Sing loud, ye thralls of breath, lest silence take your lungs. He grimaced. Doggerel, but doggerel travels faster than epic. He tucked book away. Now for Duskendale. If the lords will not ride behind our choir, we'll bring choir to their door. Jon whistled. Ghost bounded to heel. They left the clearing to its blue torches, though none of them dared imagine what shapes might gather once the scent of new-made flame drifted into root shadow. Behind them, faint as a cat's sigh, the frost on stumps thickened just a sliver. The stillness listened. In the smoking sea, the gray gull clawed eastward, sails patched with Valyrian silk plucked from a dead warlock's reliquary, silk that shimmered bruise purple one moment, hot ember red the next. Mira stood at the quarterdeck rail, watching Valyria dwindle behind them. Peaks glowing like iron left too long within forged coals, rivers of glass winding between blasted citadels. Somewhere in that furnace landscape, their silver branch glimmered. Tiny, frail against immensity, but it pulsed like a heartbeat in the bones of the world. Mira felt every throb inside her skull, a phantom echo just behind the eyes. Samwell lay below deck beside Alice Karstark, fingers blackened by volcanic dust, scribbling transliterations of new glyphs. Each rune seemed to change if observed askance. He sketched them thrice, front on, side glance, reflection in water jug, until pages blurred into fractal nightmares. He rubbed eyes, whispered prayers, continued. If he stopped, the runes might slip away entirely. Elise, arm-bound and feverish, slept fitfully. Sometimes she spoke in dreams, names of forgotten Karstark lords, promises to stillness she had renounced. Sam dabbed sweat from her brow, recited Night's Watch oaths until fever settled. He marveled how the girl who once lent herself to White Dream still harbored such fire. Perhaps guilt forged hotter steel than innocence ever could. Above, Mira's spear-tapped rail. She hummed the neck lullaby again. Sailors stopped cursing long enough to listen, though they pretended to spit in scorn. After Valyria, even bravest tongues sought comfort. When at last the smoking sea fell behind, the water darkened to normal slate, and gulls returned like drifting paper scraps along wake. Mira exhaled. Next port, she told First Mate. Summer Isles. There lie 2 more wounds. She did not mention she felt them already. Faint twin flutters under ribcage, like unborn hearts eager to break free. The Nightbringer skirted the starfish coast of the Shield Islands under moon silver. Arya Stark balanced barefoot on prow tip, eyes fixed south where her compass whispered treachery. Stars cast cold nets in black tide, but she saw no rune lights tonight. In her fist, Bran's link quivered warm instead of cold. Strange inversion that made heart race. She guessed they neared First Summer Isle fissure where heat rather than frost would birth stillness. Captain Milano joined, coat snapping. Landfall by dawn, an isle not on charts. Rocks look red even in dark. Should I worry? Worry keeps men breathing, Arya answered. Hold anchor offshore. Gendry and I row. Row into Devil Glow? I prefer breathing. Arya's half-smile disarmed. Then keep worrying while we go. Gendry hauled a chest onto deck. Inside, darts hammered from rare black-silver ore, reclaimed in Valyria's ghost forge. Each dart thin as finger, etched with Sam's quill runes. If heat bursts monsters, pointy ends cool them. He grunted. Arya squeezed his forearm. Pointy ends always do. Before dawn's gray-peeled sky, they lowered Jolly Boat and pulled for a beach of crimson sand. No birds cried, yet insects hummed high pitch as if cicadas thrived at night. The trees beyond shore sprouted leaves copper-green by lantern glow. Sap bled amber drool along trunks. When Arya stepped onto the sand, it smoked under her foot, warm as forge ash but dry. They advanced inland. Fireflies flashed violet, swirling characters in air. Arya blinked, runes again, but airy ephemeral. She read fragments. Lyanna Breathflame, hush. Names of songs maybe, or warnings. A clearing opened around a stone circle. 12 pillars, obsidian glass polished to mirrors. Between pillars, an orb of heat shimmered. At its core writhed a thread of pure white fire, twisting like worm inside fruit. Arya felt Bran's link sear her palm. She gripped harder, forced breath calm. Gendry eased hammer free. Looks fragile. Looks hungry. Arya crept into circle. Heat-battered skin. She tasted copper. Anchor stone? She asked. He produced silver-veined seed they'd carried these weeks. Runes along its shell glowed red now. as though iron fresh from forge. Arya motioned, tossed a tea. He lobbed gently. She caught. For an instant, hammer-forged trust bridged gulf between them. She kneeled at circle center, where fire thread hovered a foot above sand. She placed seed beneath, whispering, Stark, Tully, Baratheon, Reed, Karstark. Names of all currently bearing chain. Fire wound lower, licked seed. It hissed, steam not smoke, and sank partway into glass sand. A pulse rippled outward, pillars glowed, mirroring faces not present. Arya saw Sansa's determined eyes, Jon's rumpled resolve, Bran's starlight gaze. Gendry gasped. Saw his own reflection, yet bearing crown of molten silver. The pulse hit trees, leaves unfurled new veins of green, sap bleeding clear now rather than amber. Heat receded, sand cooled to bearable. The fire thread coiled around seed, fused into trunk sprouting midair. Bark translucent ruby, flickers of stories swirling inside like trapped wasps. But the stillness fought. From shadow lines slinked panther forms made of molten glass, eyes void black. They prowled silent. Arya whipped dirk, Gendry raised hammer. First panther pounced. Dirk severed leg, molten fragments crawled back, reattaching. Hammer smashed skull. Shards reformed. These beasts devoured weapon heat, grew brighter. Arya grabbed Bran's link, pressed to sand where seed rooted. She whispered Ned's words. The lone wolf dies but the pack survives. Runefire shot through link, flowed into seed. Trunk brightened. Its inner wasps turned to silver wolves, racing spiral path. The wolves howled, a sound deep, old, that shook forest. Panthers faltered, melted into glass puddles that sank into sand. The clearing stilled, save trunk, slowly crystallizing into white wood, striated red. Gendry exhaled. We done? For now. She touched trunk. It cooled to flesh warm. She smiled. The first honest smile since leaving Winterfell. Onto, next island. As they rode back, dawn-painted sea rose gold, and Nightbringer's crew muttered blessings they scarcely believed. Tyrion's wagon rattled through Duskendale's cobbled plaza smelling of smoked eel and fear. He climbed dais before the scraggly gathering of petty lords, Wyn tugging his crimson cloak. At his side Jon Snow stood plain in black wool, but ghosts amber, stare unnerved more hearts than any steel. Tyrion unfurled parchment, legend drafted nights past. He read. They heard of a chain forged from moonbeams tempered in tears, laid across a boy king's shoulders, north where God still breathed. They heard of quiet turned to hunger, of silence that chewed children's names, of trees whose faces wept in snow, until song sealed wounds with silver bark. He spun Bran into Arthurian guardian, Stark pack into wandering bards weaving ice and flame. He offered that same chain to crownlands, plant roots of story or watch hush drink halls dry. His voice rang across flags of battered town. Some laughed, until ghost bristled and torches guttered as chill swept square. Tyrion thanked them for demonstration and rolled parchment. The chain is no crown, he ended softly. It is leash for a beast that cannot die. You may sing or you may starve, my lords. By evening, every minor house within Duskendale signed Sansa's charter. Caravans of wheat wagons bound north, choir vows to line Kingswood roads, coffers pledged to melt bells into rune-etched chimes. Tyrion drank that night, not from victory but dread. Legend purchased time. But time, like coin, minted both sides. Dragonstone's beacon fires narrowed the night so fiercely, Daenerys forgot her dreams. She drifted into half-sleep on parapet, Emberfang curled below like rampart of scales. In slumber she heard bells, those dreaded bells. Yet beneath, another rhythm, chain links clinking like distant sleigh across snow. She woke with tears she had not remembered forming. Below, stonemasons from Storm's End raised basalt pillars in spiral at courtyard center, foundation for anchor seed due once Jon arrived. She supervised by torchlight, teaching them Valyrian chants that shaped mortar. Blood of the dragon binds, stone to sky. Each syllable tasted of ash and regret. But the song strengthened rock. She saw cracks close under moon. On the third night, storms off Shipbreaker Bay brought lightning with no thunder. Bolts of colorless fire that froze on descent, striking sea as mirrored spears. Each spear birthed shards of ice that floated upward, defying tide, hovering like ghosts until wind scattered them inland. One shard drifted over wall, landing at Daenerys' feet. It pulsed black inside white, cold beyond any winter. She touched, and visions flashed. King's Landing aflame, Bran bound in frost, Avatar rising hungry. She crushed the shard with heel. Ice smoked. Gone. She tightened cloak. "Date? Soon, Jon," she whispered to empty wind. North of the wall, where even Tormund Giantsbane dared not wander, the Avatar stood again. This time full height, a void clothed in ice fractals, eyes twin pits. It tested voice, crack of glaciers. Its first word. Hush. Nearby white bears slumbered into death that was not death. Their breath stopped, yet hearts beat once each long minute. The stillness smiled without mouth. It raised arm and stars overhead dimmed. They did not vanish. They dulled, as if glass smudged by thumb. It stepped south. Ice formed staircase before each stride, evaporating behind. It cared not whether men saw. Men were footnotes. Far away, Bran convulsed. His chain link sizzled, root veins hissed. He tasted death slumber inside White Bear. New Avatar moved. He hurled memory. Robb's war songs, Gilly's laughter, thunder of summer's pause. But the distance swallowed memory like stone thrown into well. He gasped, forehead hitting chair's wood. Blood trickled nose. Maester Walken rushed, but Bran waved him off. "Ravens," he croaked. "Send north." Old Bear's torch. Everything. Walken fled to comply. Bran closed tear-rimmed eyes. "Keep singing," he whispered again, though his voice shook with doubt. Sam's quill scratched across final page, copying trunk pattern from memory because parchment blurred. Ink ended. He bit thumb, smeared blood as signature. Mira stepped into cabin, sea spray in hair. "Storm ahead," she said. "But skies south stay warm. I'll soon." Sam rolled scroll, sealed wax with rune. "Ravens." 3 left. She handed. He bound scroll to Raven's leg. It cawed, unamused. He whispered, "For Bran," and released. The bird flapped into sunset like coal flick. Mira watched scroll fade. Anchor seeds wait forging. "You'll manage?" "With sleep," Sam sighed. "Sleep after storms." She grinned, slapped doorframe, strode deck. Sam slumped, exhaustion deeper than bone, but purpose hotter. He dreamed that night of Bran weaving loom. Thread snapped. Sam knotted them with quill strokes, ink sparkling. He woke sweating but smiling. The song still held. Around dawn the Avatar reached Skagar's hollow. It paused before silver sapling, head cocked at lattice of roots and chain. A low keening, neither anger nor approval. It raised hand, blue frost raced chain links. Sapling shivered, leaves rattling like chimes. At Winterfell, Bran jerked as though whipped. He pushed memory into sapling. Mira's laugh, Arya's stealthy kiss on forehead farewell. Jon's direwolf howl. The frost halted, cracked, fell off like shed skin. Avatar lowered hand. It turned east, toward shivering sea, toward Valyria's new branch, far across world. It could not yet cross water. Stillness feared deep tides. But it noted location. Another time. Instead it faced south again, following faint tug of Kingswood Fisher. It strode, leaving hollow calm but colder. Weeks spiraled forward, thread after thread weaving across continents. Tyrion's legend spread. Minstrels sang, "The chain of silent dawn." Crowds outside King's Landing's ruined dragon pit echoed refrain. "Bind the hush, sing the dawn, chain of silver in root reborn." Bells of Septa Baelor, half rebuilt, rang this tune at midday, each peal coated with runestone dust. Sansa shipped south. The sound shimmered like struck crystal. Stillness recoiled each toll. Yet in Red Keep's dank depths, wildfire vaults forgot since Eris, a green flicker woke, and with it whisper. The stillness fed on hate, trapped in flames yearning for air. Avatar's shadow reached through soil, stroked wildfire gently. The wildfire purred. Jon Daenerys, Ghost, and small honor guard rode across Blackwater Bridge that same evening, banners of chain-wolf snapping. Queen Myrcella Baratheon greeted atop ramparts. She, a shy 15 and fiercely brave after her city's ruin, curtsied. Behind her, Hand of the Crownlands, Sir Edric Storm frowned at direwolf penance. Politics brewed. But beneath their feet, wildfire simmered. Tyrion arrived midnight by carriage. Candlelit council convened. Legends recited. Charters signed. Myrcella listened wide-eyed to Bran's story, then nodded. "Then let King's Landing be first to sing," she declared. Edric scowled but obeyed. The great bells, new castings, would ring come dawn. While lords debated, Jon slipped to Godswood remnant, gnarled oak used in lieu of weirwood, and pressed palm to cracked trunk. Link cooled, Avatar neared. Daenerys joined, cloak swallowing her like red tide. "You sense it," she said. Closer than breath. She laid palm over his. Link warmed. "Ice and fire meeting." She whispered, "Let's not lose ourselves again in saving them." He closed eyes, remembering burned city nightmares. "No more lost," he swore. Arya and Gendry anchored at Second Summer Isle, a crater lake ringed by obsidian shards. They trekked Caldera Rim under noon sun yet felt chill. Anchor planted among shards. Trunk grew, but instead of white bark it bore green glass, veins scarlet. Beasts of smoke attacked, monkeys with ember eyes. Darts cooled them. Third wound sealed. Nightbringer set sail north toward Stepstones, where whispers claimed watchfires winked out one by one as hush crawled. The gray gull reached Tall Trees Town, largest Summer Isle port date. Sam bartered Valyrian silk for star iron needed to alloy next anchor stone. Islanders sang polyphonic hymns each sunrise. The stillness pulse dimmed there, as though shy. Mira laid warg charms along town perimeter. Aes recovered under warm breezes, scars fading. Sam wrote letters, "Bring your choirs south. The Isles sing strong." He carved runes into driftwood, set adrift west on current. Then came Raven from Bran. Avatar moving south. Sam quailed, but Mira sharpened spear. "We hurry," she declared. "Isles will stand with chain, or fall alone." She sent island chiefs forth with copies of Bran's rune, ordered torches on every atoll. Night before bells of King's Landing to ring, the wildfire vault beneath old Sept wall cracked. Green flame ghosted corridor ceilings, silent. Avatar's power seeped from ground, fueling chemical hunger. If the bells rang, the hush would retreat. The fire opposed song but served stillness. Within Hall of Nine Stars, Tyrion rehearsed speech. His lantern sputtered, flame turning green. He cursed, batted at wick. Lantern shattered. Fumes whooshed. Emerald glow licked curtains. Tyrion screamed for guards. Green tongues multiplied. Silent but voracious. Jon and Daenerys rushed with bucket line. But water hissed futile. Wildfire clung. Daenerys inhaled, breathed dragon flame. Red over green. The wildfire shrieked, yet mixed flames spit newborn blue that hurled across hall. Ghost barked, biting flaming scrap. Shaking until silent, Jon smashed copper brazier across smoldering drapes. The fire seemed alive, dodging, dividing, slithering toward pillars, supporting tower overhead. Avatar's laughter, silent, forged crescendo in Jon's bones. Tyrion, coughing, flung runestone dust into core blaze. A note rang, a chime heard not by ears but blood. Flame recoiled, sputtering. Daenerys followed with Valyrian verse. Jon shouted Winterfell harvest song. Ghost howled harmony. Green fire paled, retreated into cracks. Tower groaned. Ceiling stones fell but fire gone. Exhausted, Tyrion slumped. The hush found new voice, he rasped. It won't stop at corridors. Jon helped him up. Bells at dawn? Bells now, Tyrion said. Song before hush regroups. They rang smaller practice bells through night, one after another, smiths hammering limber bronze tongues, until notes soared across Capitol. Citizens woke, confused, then spilled into streets. Choir lines formed spontaneously, vendors chanting price calls in rhythm, septa hymns overlaying sailors' shanties. A choral roar rippled to harbor. Stillness in vault groaned, starved, subsided. At sunrise, Myrcella herself tolled the great bell newly forged. Sound rolled across bay like warm tide. Jon sensed Link brighten, the avatar balking miles away. Yet he knew it would not cede. It circled, looking for new cracks. Nightbringer's crew heard distant bell echoes across narrow sea. Grey Gull's deck thrummed same notes. Bran in Winterfell smiled, though tears bled. Saplings shimmered. But Avatar headed for Blackwater's mouth still. For beneath riverbed lay oldest fisher of all. Unknown to Bran's map, unanchored by chain, formed the night Valyria died, when tremor raced undersea and split Westeros bedrock. Their hush waited, unfettered. Bran collapsed. Roots recoiled, chain cooling. Maester Walken shouted, guards rushed. Sansa sprinted from hall. Blood on Bran's lip. New wound, he gasped. Black water. Jon must anchor there, Sansa said, heart dread. But he stands inside city's walls. Bran's pupils, star splinters. Then we bring river to him. Send ravens to Davos at Blackwater Bay flotilla. Tell him nets of bells, floats of song ring upon tide. At dusk flood leaps. Anchor might grow on water. Sansa held his hand. Rest, little brother. No, he whispered. Keep singing. His eyes closed, breath slowed. Roots quivered, then held. Davos Seaworth, now Admiral of the Chain, to his amazement, received Raven midday. He ordered cobbled fleet of trading cogs and Braavosi grain galleys to truss iron bells along anchor lines. When tide turned, crews beat bells with oars. Sound rippled river, lured fish to dancing frenzy. Hush in riverbed stirred, but did not yet strike. It tasted bells, wary. Jon rode to riverbank with Daenerys, Tyrion, Myrcella. He cast anchor seed, fresh forged with Stormlander star iron, into boat. Davos rode them mid-current. The water churned unnatural cold, yet surface steamed weird blue. Jon cut palm, bled into iron. Daenerys added drop of fire-warm blood. The seed drank contradiction. It sank. River hissed. Water erupted. A geyser of steam forming column shaped vaguely like man. Flicker void inside. Avatar, no longer distant, had arrived through water's memory. It towered, vaster than Fisher allowed. Arms of mist dripping icy cords. Bells stuttered silent. Boats rocked. Avatar spoke without sound. Jon felt words. Silence is your mercy. Jon lifted Bran's link. Daenerys clasped his wrist, fire under ice. Tyrion shouted legend lines. Myrcella chimed prayer. Davos rang ship's bell till hands bled. Ghost howled. Seed underwater cracked. A trunk shot up through river, piercing Avatar's chest. Silver bark, drenched, flashed blue. Leaves unfolded like steel lilies. Avatar writhed. Water around trunk froze solid, encasing void in translucent coffin. Bells resumed, their sound ricocheting off ice prison. The hush wailed, thrashing, but every thrash bled color, leaving cracks. River current dragged ice mass downstream, where geyser first burst. Ice hissed, melted. Avatar with it. Fissure sealed by root at dove deep, stitching silt to shale. Boats bobbed. Sailors gaped. Davos laughed once brittle. Daenerys exhaled flame into sky, red beacon of triumph. Jon zagged, yet Link glowed warm, no frost. He whispered, thanks to every voice that sang. Far north Avatar's birthplace trembled. void drained yet not undone. It would gather again, but slower. Bran opened eyes, steadier. Roots hummed, chorus of far bells. He breathed. "Not finished," he said, but his voice carried hope. Sansa tilted his chin. "Yet we have verse enough for dawn." Bran smiled faint. "And singers enough for night." Outside, Winterfell's longhouses rang with music. Smiths beating sword hilts on anvils, children chanting rhymes of chain. Stars overhead dazzled sharper. The stillness above horizon receded one finger's width. The story marched on, threads yet unwoven, anchors yet planted, avatar not slain but slowed. Yet each step earned new song, and as Bran listened to echoes of bells from Blackwater Bay, to hymns over smoking sea, to lullabies in Kingswood stumps, he believed the world could outsing even silence, if only voices never ceased. So he closed eyes again, just a moment, and whispered across roots and waves and clouds. "Keep singing, my friends, until the hush forgets its words."